me see. I think we're good. Probably. Yep, okay. Welcome everyone, this is On Just Restart. I am joined by Shifty, Shifty's here. So,
hello.
The link to his channel is in the description below. He covers a whole bunch of Nintendo stuff as well. Actually, I didn't want to make a topic about it, but I'm sure it'll come up. We'll probably end up talking about the whole Pro Jared thing. I saw your video on that. We don't have to talk about it. I just feel like people are going to ask about it, right? It's kind of like the news of the week, really. So
right.
We'll talk about that probably at some point. But the topics are nothing to do with that, right? We're going to talk about Detective Pikachu. I saw it, you didn't. So if anything, maybe you could ask me questions, right, about the movie if you wanted to. And then, you know, we'll get into how some implications on what it can mean for future movies as well. There's some news that came on about that as well. We'll also be going over Nintendo's E3 2019 plans, and then we'll be getting into a bit of discussion on why there's so many, like, third-party games on the Switch, or lack thereof. I guess we could have a bit of a debate about that, if there is a debate about that. And then we'll be talking about a recent interview that came up where Nintendo said some things about how cloud gaming is going to be really important for the future, and how they're going to sort of eventually sort of deal with that. So I'm sure that's probably more than enough discussion for the week, but I think it's also clear that Nintendo is holding back like information for E3, right? Which is why the last month or so has been kind of dry, quote unquote, for like Nintendo news. But a whole bunch of other things have been happening, so we've plenty to talk about. But how you doing, Shifty? Anything new with you besides the haircut?
I mean, I needed to make sure I look good for the podcast. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
But mostly the only thing that's been on my mind lately, because like you said, things have been kind of dry lately. The only thing that's been kind of, I guess, bumping in terms of news has just been the whole Pro Jared thing, which is very odd.
It's just kind of like, because there's no news, everyone's just is like kind of like, instead of there being like actual video game news, it's just, okay, since there's no video game news, let's just have a whole bunch of drama instead, right? Because the week before was Etika, right?
Right.
And now the whole Pro Jared thing. And there's like this other like makeup YouTuber, apparently, I forget his name, but
James Charles, yeah.
Yeah. Now at the end of the week, like literally like a day after the Pro Jared issues, this happened as well. Not, I know of the situation because I heard about it, but like it's just drama everywhere.
Yeah, and what's weird about the James Charles thing is that, like, because at least with Etika and Pro Jared, it was like a week of a difference, but James Charles happened pretty much immediately after Pro Jared's whole situation.
Yeah.
And you thought Pro Jared's, like, the amount of subscribers he lost was bad. James Charles lost way more. Way more. I want to say it passed 1 million already.
It's a growing thing, but yeah, I saw at least 1 million. Yeah, and I also saw that Philip is posting videos again.
Oh, you Philip Mewson?
Yes. No.
Oof. I don't know how well that's going.
Yeah. I just want to point out for those entering the chat, there will be no spoilers. I'll avoid spoilers for Detective Pikachu, so don't worry. We will talk about it, but not in a way that will spoil the movie in any shape or form. So don't be concerned. I did put no spoilers in the title. I had to edit the title because at first I didn't have that in there, but I edited it in there just to make sure people know there will be no spoilers, so don't worry. But yeah, dude, it's just drama everywhere.
I mean, the way I look at it when it comes to myself and my channel, I don't mind talking about that sort of thing, because the way I look at it, I think kind of when that's happening in the gaming sphere anyway, it's kind of important to make sure it's, you know, inclusive and welcoming the people. So when something like what Pro Jared is doing kind of surfaces, I think for me, it's important to talk about it in some way. But I know some people, they don't want to, like, you know, go into that too much because, you know, drama, and some people like to avoid that kind of topic. But
to each their own. So here's the thing. It's something that people are interested in, right? So because it's something that people are interested in, there should be people talking about it. It's that simple. I understand that some people feel like, oh, you know, if you're talking about a particular issue, like there are the YouTubers that will, the moment there's anything dramatic happening, that's what they're talking about. They will always talk about the most trending topic, right? Because it's clearly, that's the move. That's the business move, right? But
Right.
I don't know if I'm necessarily against that because I mean it's newsworthy, right? So people want to hear about it, so that's why you're talking about it. I guess my thing is I guess sometimes there are people who talk about something they don't necessarily care about, right? So on YouTube, that's kind of a weird thing because YouTube's about you and your expression and what you want to do, right? So when you have certain news channels that just talk about all of the news, even when they clearly don't care about it, I think some people don't like that, right? So maybe that's why there's a bit of a I don't know. I don't want to call that a controversy, but some people take an issue with that, right? Because some people, it depends how you look at it, right? Because if you're a news reporter for an actual like news channel, you're not going to always be able to talk about what you want. It's going to be whatever your higher ups are telling you to talk about, right? So, I guess if some people look at a YouTube news channel like that, where they're just talking about whatever the news is, then that's just what they're going to do, right? But then there's others who make it more personal and just talk about what they want to talk about. So there's like a difference, in terms of how people handle themselves on YouTube. I don't think either one is wrong. It's just kind of like a difference of opinion on how to go about it.
Right. And you could always like look at the drama channels, like those big I'm sure you've seen them somewhere, like those big drama channels that handle this sort of topic like all the time.
Right.
And I think there was one particular one, I'm forgetting who exactly, but they had like their Twitter they were getting a lot of hate on Twitter because they specifically chose not to cover the James Charles story because they had no interest in it. And they were getting some kind of flack for that.
Yeah. But maybe just I would not give someone flack for that necessarily, but at the same time, I guess there are some channels where I come to expect them to talk on a certain issue, and I'm interested in their opinion. So maybe his viewers felt that it would have been something that he would talk about, and there was that expectation, and he didn't fulfill that expectation, which he created.
Right. It's odd. I mean, when it comes to the James Charles thing, I just, I didn't talk about it because I don't care. I'm not in the beauty scene. I'm not, someone who is in that demographic, I guess.
Right.
But Bro Jared is someone I actually used to watch. I won't call myself like a fan, but I did watch his videos in the past.
I remember, and these videos surfaced because of the controversy, but he literally did a skit with Reggie at one point, right? I don't know if you remember that.
No, yeah, I remember. Yeah, it was like a weird switching thing they had going on.
Yeah, that's not something that's something that's so rare. Like, how often does Nintendo work with other YouTubers in that way? That doesn't happen. That just goes to show you how big Pro Jared was and how respected he was, right? A few years ago they were able to do something like that. That was kind of nuts. So, I don't really care for the dude. I've seen him in a few videos around the internet. I've heard of him before, of course, but this is nothing is lost. I don't watch him, right? So I'm not losing anything by this controversy at all. It's just kind of like, okay, this dude. But it is interesting for me because I'm a small YouTuber, but I do have the ambition to make this a big channel, right? I want that to be kind of like my career. So it makes me consider, okay, you have these different YouTubers and their entire lives, their personal lives are the drama that everyone is talking about. So it makes me consider how open should I be about my own personal life moving forward, Not that I'll ever be have anything to do with it. I would never do anything so terrible as what we're seeing with Pro Jared. And God willing, I don't have a mental breakdown like Etika, right? Like, hopefully those things don't happen. But still, like, it's your own private life, you know what I mean? Like, it makes you question what should be seen, what should not be seen, what should be talked about. Because when I first saw his statement, that was before I saw any of the controversy for Pro Jared, I was wondering why was he even bothering telling people that he's getting a divorce with his wife? Like, if you don't want people to talk about it, why are you talking about it,
Yeah.
That was of course, I don't know. Maybe his fans saw him in her show and there was something to address. I don't know, right? But that was my initial thought, just thinking, why even bother talking about this private part of your life if you don't want there to be a narrative on it?
Right. And there's always that argument that I've seen some fans have, and like YouTubers have kind of argued against it. Well, some of them, depending on like which YouTuber we're talking about, but there's always that argument of like, oh, you need to be transparent with your fans, but then some fans will see that as meaning like, you know, they have different interpretations of that meaning, right? So some of them want to know that personal life stuff, which I don't think anyone's really entitled to knowing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, I guess what it is that different people draw the line in different places.
Right. No, I agree.
And not everyone agrees to like where that line is. So you have fans complain, then you have YouTubers complain about privacy, and then it becomes like a whole messy situation.
Right. I mean, I do believe that any privacy issue is on that YouTuber. Yes, there are fans that have different expectations, and you have to manage that, right? Like, sometimes you're gonna have to say no, sometimes you're gonna have to say yes. It kind of depends, right? Like, I did my Q&A last week to kind of celebrate like my 3 years on YouTube or whatever, and you know, I brought up some personal stuff within a Q&A live stream that wasn't like the advertised topic or anything like that. So unless you're looking for it, you're not gonna really see it. No, even if you're looking for it, you're not going to see it. Just kind of those who cared to watch the Q&A on that particular day, right? So I'm not advertising this information, you know what I'm trying to say. But, you know, I talked about my biological mother and some of the issues I have with that, how she's not really a part of my life, how she has, you know, a mental disorder and some traumatic things that have happened. And I've talked about that. I don't think it's a problem because it's not affecting anyone, right? Like, I'm not talking about a specific person in my life that with a name that's being affected by it, right? My mom's not really, she's disconnected from all of this. So, you know, I talked about it, and I maybe question if that was even too open, but I'm okay with it because I don't mind that information being out there. I take no issue with any of that, right? But, you know, maybe if I did stuff like that all the time, people would have that expectation that I'm just always going to talk about every little thing that happens in my life. So I guess that's something to consider. But I don't. I talk mostly about Nintendo stuff, so you know I'm not really that worried about that.
Yeah, and I mean, in a similar fashion, like there's not much to know on my end. I mean, in my personal life, I'm talking about Nintendo just as much as I am on YouTube. So it's not.
That's what I talk about most of the time as well.
Yeah, like most of my friends, my personal friends, don't actually watch my videos because they know my opinion before they hear it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't expect anybody in my real life to like watch any of my videos. I mean, if they do, cool, right? My only pet peeve is like when somebody's like, "Oh yeah, I'll watch your videos." Like, hey, look, you don't have to watch it. If you watch it, if you're into it. If you're not into it, don't watch it, right? But sometimes what bothers me though is some people will just check out a video, right? Not because they're into it, but just because it's me, and they'll click on the video like, "Oh, this is cool," and then they'll click off the video like after like 30 seconds. Like, no. I would have preferred if you just didn't watch it at all, but instead you watched just the first like 30 seconds and you ruin the audience retention, right? Because you don't actually care about the video. So that bothers me more, you know, just how that kind of works out. But like I said, I like talking about Nintendo. I'm fine with that. I think when it comes to talking about your private life as a YouTuber, you kind of have to. You have to be careful about it, right? But at the same time, like, it's on you, like, whatever expectations you put on your fans to expect from that. So.
Right, especially if you run a very, like, personal channel, in a way.
Right, yes. But, I mean, if you have a personal channel, I guess that adds other layers, for sure. So, but let's, I don't know, do you guys have anything to say regarding the Pro Jared thing? I don't. I have nothing that I feel like I need to say. Aside from the fact that what he did is evil. I would never do that, ever.
Right. I mean, the only reason why his whole thing was secret wasn't even because of privacy. It was just because it was an awful thing to be doing in the first place.
Right. I mean, you know, cheating, to me, that's considered betrayal, right? Like, that's just, I would never do that, but I know I have friends who've done that, and I understand that not everything is so simple or cut and dry, but, you know, my personal views is that if you feel the need to do something like that or betray someone, then just leave them. So you shouldn't be with them to begin with. So. Right.
Yeah. I don't know. I've never done it myself, just to, you know, be sure for anyone out there, you know. No, I'm just messing around. But no, it's a total betrayal of trust. That's what it is.
Absolutely.
That's simply put, it's a betrayal of trust, and that is something that trust. That's when it gets hazy there. Like, depending on the person, it can get weird.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the other thing, like the news came out after that he was speaking, or not just speaking, he was sharing nude images and manipulating and in some ways psychologically abusing like younger, underage kids. I mean, that's just, that's wrong on so many levels.
Yeah.
It's alleged, right? It's not like proven, so that's probably end up being some sort of court case or something, which is pretty bad. Definitely, I would stay away from that. So, yeah, I'm not gonna defend this guy. It's what do you defend, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting though how like his work. There's nothing necessarily wrong with his work. Like you look at someone like Philip, where his personal life, it doesn't seem like he did anything wrong to anyone. Well, actually, I take that back. But the thing that he did that was so wrong literally impacted the work because he was stealing other people's work and showing it as his own, right? So that's bad, but that's literally affecting his career. But you look at someone like Pro Jared, where the things he's doing are like in the background. They're not actually impacting the work he's doing. You know what I mean? So but it's interesting how when you do something, first of all, if the whole allegations about the manipulating kids and stuff, he's going to jail for that potentially, right? So if you're in jail, you can't really do your job. But the whole cheating on your wife thing is interesting to me because as wrong as it is, it's not related to the job, yet because of it, he's losing a lot of viewership, right? And I guess when you're like a public figure, it's not just about how well you do your job, it's about what people think of you because you're a public figure. That's just another little angle that I feel like a lot of people don't really think about when it comes to being, I guess, a YouTuber, right?
Right. I also think it's very important how exactly they go about it, because the problem is that if you compare Pro Jared's situation with Dr. Disrespect,
right?
Dr. Disrespect, yeah, they both cheated on their wife, but Dr. Disrespect ironically has more like respect on him purely because, for one, it didn't take his wife to out him or to catch him in the act. He kind of just admitted fault and admitted the whole thing on his own terms.
Did he stay with his wife?
Yeah, I think he's still with her.
Well, that's another element too, right? Like Pro Jared cheated on his wife, hurt her for a couple of years apparently, emotionally by continuously cheating and lying about it, and then still is leaving her for someone else and was unapologetic about the whole thing, right? He didn't admit to it at all. He had to be outed, like you said. So it's a completely different thing. Dr. Disrespect, like, he made a terrible mistake, and he got a lot of flack for it, even when he admitted it, right? But that was like a road to redemption for him. He had a road to redemption, right? I don't think there's a road to redemption for Pro Jared. I think that's not really a realistic option at all for him.
Yeah, because there was a clear difference in intent.
Right.
Like Dr. Disrespect knows he messed up, so he admitted fault and he put in the work to to that redemption. Pro Jared is just he's not doing any of that.
Mm-hmm. Has there been any statements since the everything came out, or no? Has he been completely silent on it?
He tweeted once after, and it had nothing to do with the entire situation.
Just ignoring it.
Yeah, basically.
Well, I mean, at this point, it's like a legal thing, potentially, right? So why even...
Probably.
You probably don't want to talk about it, because that could affect...
I could imagine his lawyer saying something like, don't talk anything about it, let us handle it behind the scenes or something. Because he probably doesn't want Jared to say something that would, further incriminate him.
Right. Yeah, I just checked his Twitter. He has one post since then, 2 days later, just saying he won't be able to make it to an event. Hopes everyone has a great time.
Yeah, and I retweeted and made fun of that. So you can't take that seriously. Like, you're the first tweet since the controversy, and it has nothing to do with it whatsoever. Everyone's gonna make fun of it for it. That's just the internet.
Yeah, weird. I wonder if the reason he said he can't make it is because he's gonna be in jail. Yeah. It's definitely weird. But let's move on. Let's move on to some Nintendo stuff. Unless there's anything else you want to add.
Not really. I made the
we
joke.
Agree he's a dickbag. He's probably going to jail, maybe.
That's probably an understatement.
Yeah. Okay. I'm being very nice.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so moral of the story, don't be an evil son of a bitch, and maybe you'll still have your job.
That's a very low bar to set.
Yeah.
That's a very low bar.
Yeah. All right, but let's move on. I know I haven't said hi to you guys in the chat yet. Hello there, Chris, Joe, Mastermind. How you guys doing? Vilbeard, Computer Robots, Adam, Sabbath, Brandon the Stallion. How's everyone doing? So let's get this show on the road. I am... Yes, okay. I looked at my OBS. It said 0, and I realized I was looking at recording, not stream. So I was like, oh, damn. What's going on? We're good. We're good. We're going to try to keep this one a bit on the shorter side. We're aiming for a 90-minute stream, so we're 20 minutes in. So that means we got like 70 minutes focusing on the topics. We'll probably go over. We'll see how things pan out. But yeah, we got some stuff to talk about. We're going to be talking about Detective Pikachu. I saw the movie yesterday. We already brought this up at the beginning of the podcast, right? Yeah, I did. I'm pretty sure. But anyway, there are the topics there. That's what we're going to be getting into. Let's see what you guys are saying, though. Chris, last night someone stacked me for liking Sonic Adventure 2. What's wrong with Sonic Adventure 2? It's not as good as Sonic Adventure 1, right?
I'm guessing stacked is a negative thing.
Yeah. That seems to be the case.
I don't like 95% of Sonic games, to be honest with you.
Probably not like the movie either.
Probably not. Yeah. But I'm not gonna, I guess, stack someone for enjoying something I don't. That's just weird.
You watching Game of Thrones?
I have not.
Okay.
I haven't seen a single episode, but now that it's ending, I could binge the whole thing.
You could. Yeah. And in which case, I'm not gonna say anything. Not gonna say anything. No, I'm like really want to say something, but I'm just not gonna say. I'm not gonna say anything.
Is that like a real major spoiler?
No, just kind of more. You're like trying to pull it out of me. All right. I'm just gonna say that.
Wait. What if someone in the chat hasn't seen it?
It's not a spoiler. It's just not really. Trust me on this. It's not. It's just that season 8, the final season. There have been a lot of expectations for the episodes, and for a lot of people, they don't always match up to those expectations, even though it's very, in terms of like CGI and special effects, this season is like top of the line, like maybe some of the best, most expensive stuff we've seen on television. But in terms of like the writing and the story, some people feel like it's rushed, which it kind of is. Like any sort of movie, any sort of book to movie or TV adaptation is always going to be rushed naturally, but it almost seems like there could have been like another season, but it doesn't mean it's not good. It's just, there's a lot of expectations, but whatever. It doesn't matter. The show is still great. You should still watch it. I want to see you cry. So.
Oh my.
But we have some questions here, so let's get into them. I do remember Pro Jared on Screw Attack, I think. It's all so long. It was years ago that all this stuff was relevant. Like, they're, like, really old content creators.
Yeah, I found Pro Jerry when he was on YouTube, but I did watch Screw Attack, but I didn't even know he was on Screw Attack until people mentioned it.
Yeah. Again, this is all old stuff. He's, like, one of the OGs, you know?
Yeah. I don't even know. He messed up so bad.
Mm-hmm. Computer Robots. What are the evidences that point to Banjo-Kazooie being in Smash DLC rather than Steve from Minecraft? Well, for one, there is a data mine from one of the initial versions of Smash Brothers that has a list of games that could have spirit representation within the game, and there were 2 that weren't featured or represented by the spirits we already have, and those are Blast Corps and Jet Force Gemini, both of which are IP owned by Rare, which is owned by Microsoft. Those are Rare franchises. That's not really... Nintendo can't have those in their coding unless they're working together on something. That's the implication. So people believe that because that there's that data mine, that it shows that, hey, Nintendo's communicating with Rare, thus communicating with Microsoft. Makes sense, but that doesn't mean necessarily that it has to be Banjo-Kazooie, right? It could just be that there'll be rare spirits, right? Because there'll be some sort of Microsoft inclusion. That's what it could mean. It also could just mean that there were discussions and then they fell through and they're no longer in the coding anymore, right? Because sometimes there's discussions, they'll start development on something and then they won't come to fruition publicly, so they'll take it out. That's pretty much my understanding of it. But I do think it is a strong point for Banjo-Kazooie. That's like one of the stronger points because there's actual like hard information showing, hey, look, there's something going on there between Rare and Nintendo. How do you feel about that, Shifty, in terms of that data mine?
I mean, the fact that it's a real thing means that, there is some weight to it, but I do feel that it's too much of an open-ended like explanation that it could be like definitive.
Right. The best, right? Our favorite conclusion from that would be that Banjo's in the game, but that's not the only potential conclusion. There's several.
Right, exactly. It could be that there's nothing coming because there was something, like you said, that's something that fell through, or it could be a completely different character than Banjo. It's like there's a lot of possibilities here.
Exactly. So that point alone, I wouldn't say confirms Banjo. Nothing confirms until it's confirmed. Nothing's confirmed. But I do feel like it's a really strong point, more in favor of Banjo rather than Steve, because it's Rare rather than Mojang or something. So like that is one thing. There have been rumors for both, more rumors from leakers for Steve, though, so you could consider that. I have a whole video talking about this. Actually, it's on my channel. I literally talk about all of the... I bring up all of the points supporting Steve, supporting Banjo, supporting even Master Chief, and then, of course, all the points going against them as well. So check that out. I go into detail there. But yeah. I do believe Banjo-Kazooie is... That's who I'm betting on.
For me, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a situation where... we get Minecraft Steve, and all his alternate outfits are all different Microsoft characters that are skins.
Totally, I hate the idea of that, but yes, that's possible.
Because I don't know if you've ever played Minecraft on the Xbox, but there is a Banjo skin already in that game.
And I'm pretty sure there's a Master Chief skin as well.
Yeah, so they can easily use those and then add skins from different Microsoft properties and blah 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 and all that stuff.
There is an interesting theory that if you follow the whole Smash leak rumor DLC community, you'll probably have heard about this, but there's a whole Google theory thing that came from Papagenos and his Discord. I think I'm losing my voice. Yeah, I am. But anyway, there's like this whole Google theory where if you're Googling from Europe, and I'm butchering this, there's probably some details I'm missing, but basically if you're Googling from Europe, there's only specific characters that when you Google their name and Smash Brothers, that a Smash Bros advertisement comes up, which may seem like pulling at straws, but apparently they searched like 1,000 or somewhere between 500 and 1,000 names, and only 4 characters did an actual Smash Bros ad come up for. Not Steve or Erdrick, which are widely discussed for Super Smash Bros., right? But Banjo, Master Chief, Ryu Hayabusa, I know you joked about it on Twitter the other day. Maybe you joked about it on April 1st. And the one that's kind of like completely out of left field is a Dark Souls character, but I love the possibility of that. So the Google theory suggests that because there's only a Smash ad associated with these 4 characters as opposed to all of the other characters that are searchable, people think that maybe there was something set within the search engine optimization for these particular characters and the DLC for Smash Brothers that only those would come up when you search for them from Europe, and that was a slip up from Nintendo of Europe. Maybe. If that's the case, that means we're getting Ryu Hayabusa, not Master Chief, Jesus. Ryu Hayabusa, Doomslayer, Banjo-Kazooie, and I don't know the name, but it's a boss from Dark Souls.
A boss from Dark Souls?
Yeah.
So I've played every Dark Souls, so I would know if you said the name, but I don't know.
I'll look it up real quick.
But, I mean, I'll just say, like, while you're searching it, I think that... it just sounds like a stretch to me.
Yeah, it is.
It sounds like a massive stretch. I don't know. I'm not...
Artorias?
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Artorias. Okay, yeah, I know who that is.
Yeah, is he like... I think I heard he's like in the DLC for the first Dark Souls?
Yeah, he's like the final boss of... No, not the final boss. He's like one of the bosses. He's like the main focal point, kind of one of the DLCs.
I mean, I think it would be pretty cool, especially because Dark Souls doesn't have like a face to it, right? It's just a dude in armor. So like, if you just wanted to like use Artorias, I think that'd be cool because he's like a known boss, right? And the form of him could definitely be a Smash fighter. It's not like he's something else where, it's not like he's like a giant sludge thing that's the size of 3 stages, right? He's not a giant monster. He's not bigger than Ridley. He's humanoidish, right? So It's not a stretch to think that they can make him into some sort of Smash character.
It is interesting that they would choose Artorias. Like I know Artorias is pretty popular within the Dark Souls like community, especially the people who really like the first one, like I do. But I'm surprised that they went with like if that's the case, I'm surprised that they would go with Artorias rather than say like some kind of default main character. Because yeah, you could say technically there is no real main character of Dark Souls, but there's a lot of games that are in Smash that are like kind of represented with a default avatar character like Robin, Corrin.
Yeah, sorry, I keep sneezing.
No, you're good. But yeah, there's like the villager, Animal Crossing villagers like that. There's like multiple characters like that. So if they wanted to, they could have chose the main character of Dark Souls and just give him the default look.
I kind of like the decision, assuming this is legitimate, right? Because it gives it some personality, and I understand what you mean. Like they've done it before. They've had, like Villager, for example. But I feel like with Villager, they gave it a fair bit of personality, right? So maybe they could still do that with just the basic sort of default Dark Souls character, but maybe they felt like a better way would just to make a boss the playable character instead. Right, so maybe at some point they think, okay, we want to represent this franchise. What's the best way to do it? And maybe they have that discussion. Should we just have a default Dark Souls character that just has like different armors with skins, or should we use another popular character within the series? And maybe they talk about a few different options, and maybe Artorias is the one that seemed to be like the best fit for them when they had that discussion.
Right. It just feels kind of off to me. Something about representing a new franchise for the first time with not the main character feels weird. I'll
tell you this, right? So we know one of the 5, right? Obviously, Joker came out already, right? I like Google Theory, right? Like it includes some characters that I would really like to see, like Banjo and Artorias. I think that's a really cool idea. And I'd be okay with Doomslayer. I'm not super excited about Ryu Hayabusa, even though I know he could be a fun character because I've played the Ninja Gaiden series. There's some crazy powers you can use, right? Like he'd be a cool dude. But I'm just saying, like, even though I don't believe it, but I think it would be cool. If the next character we get is Banjo-Kazooie, I still don't believe that the Google Theory necessary. But if the next character is Artorias, then I'm just gonna assume that the rumor is legit, right? So basically, for me, is like once 2 of the 4 characters are confirmed, then I'd be like, all right, maybe this is legitimate. And actually, yeah, that's what I think that's what it would be for me. I need 2 more of these characters to be confirmed before I believe the theory is 100% legit. But if one of the characters confirmed that still satisfies this theory, then I'll be paying more attention to it, right? I'll always kind of go, oh, maybe this theory is real, but I still don't buy into it yet. But it is at least interesting.
Right, and out of the several leaked, like kind of DLC picks that I've seen, those are probably the ones that would get me the most excited, if I'm gonna be honest, because I love Dark Souls, I love Doom, I like Banjo, those are all characters I like. In the same vein, I guess Ryu Hayabusa would be my least favorite of that 4.
Yeah.
But I love most of the games that are represented there.
Right, and I'd be okay with that, and I mean, we've had a discussion before about Steve and Erdrick. Like, they're from popular franchises, but from my demographic, right, those aren't necessarily the most exciting. So, but they're not just trying to appeal to my demographic. So I understand that, which is why I'm not like, oh, no way they would do that, because they might. There are different demographics to appeal for when it comes to Smash Brothers, right? So,
right,
it's hard to say just based off that.
That's why I'm so into the idea of Doom Guy getting into Smash, just because unless you want to be technical and count Metroid Prime, to my knowledge, off the top of my head, there's no real hardcore shooter representative. Unless you count like NES Zapper Duck Hunt or like something like that.
I mean, Duck Hunt's one of the first shooters.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, unless you count something like that, like a light gun type situation.
Kid Icarus, the original, you shoot, but I don't know if you would call it a shooter. I would say that Kid Icarus Uprising is kind of is a shooter though.
Kind of, but I'm thinking more FPS with this.
Right. No, I know. Yeah. I'm playing devil's advocate here.
Yeah, because that's more of like a, what do you call that? Like a shooting gallery kind of game, like a, I don't know what you call that genre in particular.
Like it's like Ikaruga or not exactly like Ikaruga, but or Sin and
Ikaruga.
Punishment. They're similar in the sense that you have a whole bunch of enemies on screen. You have to like move around, and you have the targeting. But there is some platforming, some running around environments as well. So it is a little different. Kid Icarus Uprising is interesting. I really think they should have a sequel for that, but that's neither here nor there. What would you say in terms of what am I getting at here? What are we talking about? No, I that's right. I interrupted your question, actually, because you're not your question, your point. You're bringing up how Doomslayer would be interesting because he's from a first-person shooter, right? And Metroid's more of a Metroid first-person adventure, so it would be the first character we would have to be representing first-person shooters, the typical style of a first-person shooter.
Yeah, it's kind of it started as an FPS, Doom specifically. It started as an FPS. It's kind of considered to be the grandfather of shooters in a way.
Right.
And seeing it, and it's still doing really well to this day. Doom 2016 is amazing, and Doom Eternal looks like it's just kind of continuing that shtick, and it's also going to be on Switch. So it's kind of like I really like the idea of him in there just because it puts more genre representation in there. Because we have JRPGs, we have platformers, we have like all these different strategy games are represented. Like we have a ton of different genres. The only one that's not represented by like a real classic icon for their respective genre is FPS, and Doom Guy would be perfect for that.
I see what you're saying. That makes sense. I think it works. Yeah, I'm with you there. And I mean, Doomslayer, there's reason to believe in Doomslayer. One, there's the Google theory, right? But then there's also that old theory that included Steve and Ryu Hayabusa. That's the thing about Ryu Hayabusa is that there's another Ryu already in the game. So it's going to be annoying to be like, oh, Ryu Hayabusa every time we're talking about the Ninja Gaiden Ryu. It's going to be weird. But anyway, Ryu from Ninja Gaiden, Doomslayer, Steve, and Erdrick, right? There's that leak that supports that. But I think it's been semi-debunked already.
They'll probably just say Hayabusa, by the way.
Okay, that'd be better. Yeah. Still, it's a long name, but it would still be better. And then, of course, we know that Bethesda has been in talks with Nintendo, and Smash Brothers has come up. That's what we've heard. What does that mean? Maybe nothing, maybe something, but that has come up. So I do think Doomslayer has a shot for sure.
I just think that even if he doesn't get in, then fine, because leaks, and you don't want to trust the leak too much. But it's just out of the ones that we're hearing about a lot, that's kind of the one that I'm personally like really invested in right now, just because I like the idea of him being in it a lot, and I'm just genuinely really interested to see how they would represent him.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I like the other theory that we're going to be getting another Capcom rep, another Square rep, and another, I believe, Namco Bandai rep, because if you look at the way we got the Sega Mii Fighters when we got Joker, right? People are thinking that all of the old Mii Fighters that were cut from Smash for Wii U, we'll be getting them when we get a character that's represented by a particular publisher, right? We're missing some Capcom reps, we're missing some Square Mii Fighters, we're missing Mii Fighters from Bandai Namco, from Capcom, and from Square, and then people are just assuming that the fifth character is a Microsoft character. I like that idea, mainly because it opens up the possibility of us getting Nightmare from Soul Calibur and Leon S. Kennedy from Resident Evil, because I really like those characters. But that's just, my personal wish list. That's not even a prediction. But I mean, I still like that theory because it could suggest a Namco character and a Capcom character, so that'd be cool to see as well.
Right. I mean, when it comes to Mii Fighters, I'm so disconnected from them. I
have no interest in Mii Fighters, for the record. They're just whatever.
Yeah, that's my thing. I made 3 Mii Fighters of each just so I can have them, but that's really it. I'm not invested with them almost at all. But I mean, if there was any they could add, that'd be cool. I mean, just bringing back a lot of the old ones that we had in Wii U that's not in Ultimate for some reason. Just bring a lot of those back, and I think that I'd be okay with it. I don't know if I want to spend money on it necessarily, but
I just rather have alternative skins for actual characters, not the Mii costumes. That'd be way cooler.
Yeah, that's basically where I stand on it. Like, I'd rather have Mario with alternate outfits, Link with different armor types, and that kind of thing. Mii Fighters just, especially with how little I use them as a whole, it's just it feels like a waste if I buy a Mii Fighter outfit.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. I don't use them. Like I've messed with a couple here and there. Like I've spent like a total of 5 to 10 minutes on the Mii costumes, and I've probably spent over 100 hours in Smash Ultimate. So it's not worth it for me. But there's still some things I want to bring up in the chat, and we still haven't touched any of the topics, and we have like 50 minutes left. So I'm gonna get to this. So, there's another question from Adam. So he's saying, asking, do you think Monster Hunter has a chance in Smash Ultimate for DLC? I'm gonna say to not expect it, because we already have the boss. I feel like if there was gonna be a character, they would have added the character along with the boss, and they didn't. I'd be surprised if they added another Monster Hunter character. But I mean, if you subscribe to this whole theory that we're getting Mii Fighters from Smash for Wii U for each publishers being represented, and we get some of the missing Capcom Mii costumes, then maybe Monster Hunter is a new Capcom rep. But I just feel like because we have the boss, I don't think the Rathalos boss. I don't think there's gonna be another character added anytime soon. At least not this year.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Yeah.
Mii outfit at most.
Yeah, maybe another Mii outfit, maybe some spirits, but that's it. I do think there's a chance we could get a new Monster Hunter game this year, though. So, that'd be better for me. I'd rather get an actual Monster Hunter game.
It'd be cool with that, yeah. I need to get more into Monster Hunter. I've literally only played World.
And that's not even, I would say, Monster Hunter World's kind of like the mainstream Monster Hunter, right? It kind of it's a small departure from the other Monster Hunter games, although it's basically Monster Hunter. So it's just interesting that that's the one you've played, but I guess that's the most mainstream one, right? It's the most popular one that people have played recently.
Right, I think it's like that entry level game.
Absolutely. It's good from everything. I don't own it, so I can't say it's like, oh, it's the best game I've ever played, but from what I've heard and seen, it seems pretty good. So, but Monster Hunter is a fantastic series, dude. Like, I'm really kind of hoping that they have to. They have Monster Hunter games coming up for the Switch all the time. Eventually, they're going to have a ground-up Monster Hunter for the Switch. It's just a matter of when they announce it. I mean, maybe they could go for porting Monster Hunter World instead. That could maybe happen, but I feel like they're going to make their own Monster Hunter game. Like another one that runs better on Switch, that's made for the Switch with the Switch in mind. Because they did that for the 3DS, right? They had that Monster Hunter, which was developed for the 3DS in mind, and the only Monster Hunter that we've gone was an HD upres of the previous one, basically, on 3DS.
Right.
But I think soon we'll be getting another Monster Hunter.
I guess so, yeah. Because I feel like they would have a lot of trouble trying to get World on there. That'd
be a mess.
Yeah, that'd be a very difficult task. They probably just prefer making a whole new one altogether.
The game would look way better if they just made it for the Switch instead. Made a new one, ground up.
Yeah.
It would be a blurry thing. I want again, it's running at 60 frames per second that looks smooth. Like, like you had games on the Wii that looked smooth and ran fine, right? It just needs to be developed for that system. It would suck to play Monster Hunter at like 540p with 30 frames and not even be super solid with that, right? And that's what would happen if they ported over Monster Hunter World, basically.
Yeah, it would be kind of like a Doom or like Mortal Kombat scenario.
Right. So it would run, it would look like the game, but it'd be a much lesser version of the game. And I'd rather they just make another Monster Hunter, which is what they've been doing for the handhelds for a while, and that's probably what they're gonna treat that as their new modern day, mobile Monster Hunter, which is where they focus on anyway. So,
right.
Fingers crossed we see it this year.
Maybe this year. I don't know. Wait, how long has it been since the last Monster Hunter? I want to say like a few years, right?
I mean, there's like a Monster Hunter coming out every year, honestly.
So yeah, it probably will come out. If there's a Monster Hunter every year, we might see one then.
Right. There's pretty much always Monster Hunter news every year. And now the thing is, they don't make a ground up new game. What they do is they take one game and they just add like features and more monsters to that base game and just give it like an additional names. Like they kind of remaster that particular generation of Monster Hunter like 2 or 3 times before they move on to the next one. So, but I think we're not too far from like the next step up for the mobile version of Monster Hunter. Because I mean, Monster Hunter World is not like a series, right? It's just like kind of its own like little departure from the main Monster Hunter. But we'll see.
Right. I mean, if they're developing one specifically for the Switch, it probably would take longer then, because they're not just adding on top of something.
Well, we don't know how long they've been working on it. They could have been working on it for a while already.
That's true. I guess it depends on that then.
Right.
But it's kind of hard to say.
I'm not, like I said, it doesn't have to be this year. There were rumors coming from some people earlier in the year that there was a Monster Hunter for Switch this year. But there were rumors, and that supposedly it was gonna be announced earlier, and it hasn't happened, right? So those rumors could be false. It could just be that it still hasn't been announced yet. It's gonna be more of a later year thing. If it's not this year, I mean, they're not gonna go 2 years without any Monster Hunter on Switch. So, you know, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I could see that happening.
So let's we gotta move on to topics, but I'm gonna address this one thing from South. If anyone's gonna represent first-person shooters, I want James Bond from GoldenEye. That'd be great, Sabbath64. I mean, like, you know, he's just pretty cool, but because it's James Bond, I don't see. It's like a marketing terror.
Yeah, that it's a licensing nightmare.
Yeah,
basically.
licensing. I don't know why I said marketing. I'm done. I'm dead in my head.
I mean, it'd be a nightmare, and like 007 is a really good game, but if you're representing first-person shooters, you can't go wrong with like one of the games that kind of kickstarted the whole genre.
Absolutely. So, but let's get into the actual topics. We're 46 minutes in, and we haven't jumped into any of the topics. So let's get started with that now. All right. So, Detective Pikachu. I saw it yesterday. I thought it was really good. Now, like I said earlier, we're not going to actually spoil anything, right, Shift? You haven't seen it yet. So if there's any questions you want to ask me, guys in the chat, if anything you guys want to ask me about the movie, by all means do so. But I really enjoyed it. I went in not expecting maybe the best written story ever, and it isn't the best written story ever. It's not like this super deep Emmy award-winning sort of movie, but it was a really entertaining movie. And there was a lot of moments with the Pokemon that I was kind of in awe of. Like, I think what they accomplished with the actual Pokemon themselves, the special effects, the CGI around the Pokemon, and how they interact with each other and how they move about in the world, is kind of like mind-blowingly good. And I really want them to use this as a base for more Pokemon movies moving forward. And I think they pretty much already effectively confirmed that they're working on another Pokemon movie already. So that's really exciting for me, because what they accomplished with the actual Pokemon that you see in the movie is just amazing. Like, I'm not going to spoil anything, but there are some moments with Pokemon that you wouldn't kind of expect, and you see what they do with it, and it's insane. Like, there's one thing I wish I could spoil, but I'm not going to. But just put it this way. They do something with a particular Pokemon that the actual Pokemon games have never done before, but it is in no way a shame or disrespect to what the Pokemon is or its lore. It actually just adds to it, and it's just an incredible, awe-inspiring thing. Emphasis on awe-inspiring. That's all I'm going to say, related to one random Pokemon that happens to one part in the movie. But basically, all of the Pokemon I think are really, really good. I love the personality with them, and that's why I came to watch the movie, to see that. The acting, it was kind of spotty for me, to be totally honest with you. There were moments that were solid, right? There were other moments I was like, oh, that's like really awkward. Like, I can tell that this was, you know, like it felt like a little amateurish at times when it came to the acting in some moments. But the cinematography, the shots, the lighting, the setting, the way it all came together, I thought was really impressive. So overall, I mean, I think it's a really entertaining movie. If you're a Pokemon fan, you need to watch it. Like, you're gonna love it, right? If you're just a non-Pokemon fan, you might not like it as much unless you just appreciate really good like special effects in terms of all of these different creatures interacting with the world. But yeah, I liked it a lot, to put it simply.
It's interesting. Like I'm gonna try to see it this week so I can see all of that for myself. Because I've seen some reviews talk about like, oh, the narrative isn't as deep as it could have been. But and for me, it's like I'm going to a movie. I'm going to see a movie called Detective Pikachu. I wasn't expecting Citizen Kane.
Right.
So it's like I went in. I'm going in there hoping to see like realistic Pokemon behaving like Pokemon in a world full of Pokemon. Like,
So think about this for a second. There are some scenes in the movie where you just kind of go through nature and see how the Pokemon move around and interact with nature. Like they could take those scenes and just expand upon just that element of the movie, and they could call it like Pokemon Earth or something, right? And just put it on Netflix. Like it's 2 hours of like a giant nature documentary, but it's Pokemon. Like they could do that, and it would sell millions. Like it's really there's some cool moments in the movie like that.
yeah, that's what I want to see because, like, I'm sure the storyline is like serviceable. I just really want to see like what the Pokemon are doing, how they interact with things, and kind of just like the idea of realistic Pokemon as a whole.
And if that's what you're going in for, I think you're gonna be really happy with the movie because I think that's one of the strongest parts of the movie.
Right. 'Cause I feel like most people, well, most people who are Pokemon fans anyway, went into it with that kind of mindset.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going into it exactly, if you don't expect like a super nuanced, complicated story, it isn't really a super nuanced, complicated story. That doesn't mean there aren't some twists and turns, though. There are some twists and turns that I didn't necessarily see coming. Like, I would, I might even go as far as saying that I appreciate the story of Detective Pikachu a little bit more than the story of Game of Thrones right now. But that's whatever. We're not gonna talk about Game of Thrones here. I'm sorry.
That's a hot take. I don't even watch Game. I haven't seen either one of them, but I know that's a hot take.
It's a hot take. Yeah. I'll say it. I enjoyed the story for Detective Pikachu more than what I've enjoyed from the story of Game of Thrones so far in the last season. Yeah, I guess I didn't even think of it as a hot take, but I guess it is. So I do hope for Game of Thrones they bring it all together full circle in the final episode. They may do that, right? But this is not about Game of Thrones. Let's go back to Pikachu. I love the movie. I think it's great. If you're a Pokemon fan, you have to watch it. You have to watch it.
I am kind of curious about people who are not Pokemon fans who are just bringing like their kids in to see the movie and like their mindset on it because we're all fans of Pokemon. We know what we're getting ourselves into. We know, you know, we're most likely going to enjoy this movie for pretty much every little thing that it does because it caters to us. But I do wonder, like, how much did this movie cater to like the people outside of the fandom? Because that's something I think Marvel did really well. Because like people who have never
created fans with their movies.
Right, they created fans with the MCU. You know, you didn't have to watch or not watch, but you didn't have to read the Iron Man comics to like suddenly watch Iron Man, be into the character and be into the movies.
And it's an interesting point you bring up because there was actually an interview came up where the creators of Detective Pikachu, they were asked how would they make like a Smash Brothers movie, and they said that in order to make a proper Smash Brothers movie, they would have to have an introductory movie for each of the different franchises. They would need to have the Legend of Zelda movie where they talk about Link and his origins, explain who he is and his story and why he's a hero. The same for Mario, and then, you know, these different characters. So it was really interesting how they basically said, I mean, they brought up the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that if they were to go in that direction, like Nintendo and Pokemon Company and Warner Brothers, like that they were to do that, they would basically mimic what's being done with Marvel. And I would love it if they were to do that. But Detective Pikachu isn't really like an origins movie for Pokemon, right? So like I think they would need to have an actual new Pokemon movie if they were going to build up to have like a Smash cinematic universe. They would have to have a new Pokemon movie to be the origin story for that, because they briefly touch on those things, but I think like just going back to the point you were bringing up, Shifty, like I think they don't really explain enough to get people who are non-Pokemon fans like fully understanding of the situation. They're gonna
Right.
I think it's still enjoyable, right? It's hard for me to say for sure because I am a Pokemon fan, right? Like, whenever I watch interviews on the cast, when they talk about how much they know about Pokemon, I'm like, yeah, these people don't know anything. like nothing. Like I saw a little quiz they did where they asked the actual like the main cast, like if you knew if this Pokemon, and all they did was bring up names, right? And all they had to do was say yes or no, and that it wasn't like they were asked to write down the names or state the names. They were stated, the names were already stated, and they just had to say if that was a Pokemon or not. And I was shocked at how bad they were. It was really bad. Like, maybe you miss one, right? Maybe you miss one, but it just shows that they're not, like, the cast, like, they're very, very casual Pokemon fans. So I'm a hardcore Pokemon fan. So for me, you know, I understand everything about the movie, right? I understand all of the references. So for me, I get the max enjoyability from the movie. But the lesser your Pokemon knowledge is, the less you're gonna notice that's interesting about the movie.
Right. So that's what I was thinking about, because if they really want to do the whole Super Smash Brothers like Avengers type thing,
I think that to be the greatest thing in the world. They need to do it. It needs to happen. Think about how huge Smash is, man.
I mean, I'm well aware, but the thing is that would be, I think, way more challenging than the Avengers, because the Avengers, every single one of those members has a story already written, while like Nintendo characters, some of them do, but some of them are the most basic.
But they're games. That's the problem. You're right. That's the problem. So the Marvel characters, they're from comic books, right? Comic books are stories. Like, the focus of that thing is the story, right? For these Nintendo characters, the focus of the Nintendo characters in their respective games is not necessarily a good story. It's about fun. So it's gonna be a lot harder to do that. But on that note, I will say that Detective Pikachu is by far the greatest video game to movie adaptation of all time. Which is not saying much, because every single video game to movie adaptation is terrible. But Detective Pikachu is not terrible. It's good by, you know, just typical movie standards. It's a good movie. It's entertaining to watch. You're going to enjoy it. Even if you don't like Pokemon, you'll just think it's like a cute movie, right? With a cute little story between Boy and Pikachu. Like, it's entertaining. But the value comes from just the knowledge of the franchise. So I don't know. It'll be different for sure. And I don't think there's any way the movies could be as high quality.
Yeah, I just think that some franchises would work well. Like, you have Metroid, that would be easy to make a story out of.
Because Metroid's literally based off the original Alien, so you just make Metroid Alien.
Basically, like that wouldn't even be that difficult. But then let's get into Legend of Zelda territory. What's Link gonna do? Is he gonna talk this time? Which Link are we basing it off of? Are we gonna do an origin story? Are we doing Skyward Sword then?
If it's to get an idea of how bad a silent Zelda movie would be, take all the Breath of the Wild scenes and put them together, and you'll realize you may not even need to put them together, but putting them together kind of makes it like an anime, right? The characters are actually pretty good, but when they interact with Link, it gets really awkward. Why? Because Link doesn't say anything, so it's like they're having a conversation, and they wait a moment for him to respond. He doesn't say anything, so they just continue talking. Like, it's kind of like that. It's very awkward to me. The Breath of the Wild story, and I like them. I'm just saying, like, there is a degree of awkwardness because Link doesn't talk. Like, part of the reason why the story isn't considered to be that good in Breath of the Wild is because Link doesn't talk. I still think it's serviceable. I think it could have been better, but one of the main issues is Link not talking. So how are you going to make a whole movie that's not segmented, right? That's one continuous narrative where the main character doesn't talk, right? Like, it would have to be like a weird movie, and if you're doing something that's Legend of Zelda, it would need to be more of a mainstream style kind of movie. So it would be really challenging. I think they should just make Link talk if they were to ever do a Zelda movie.
I honestly, if they ever came out and announced that they were coming out with a Zelda movie, I would immediately be skeptical to it doing well, because sure, Zelda has stories to base things off of, but because of the way the stories are told, they're typically told by just people talking to Link, and since you're supposed to be Link, they're basically just talking to you, and then you go do what you have to do.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, I don't know, I would be skeptical in how they do it.
So this is how I think they could handle a Zelda movie. All right, so let's look at Ocarina of Time, right? The premise of the villain, the background, I think that's all good for a good, like, medieval fantasy story, right? Like, the premise of there being a civil war, of a mother leaving a boy in a wood, right? So he's like this chosen hero, like something like that, where there is an evil coming from the desert, and he wants to steal the richer lands from Hyrule, and he's seeking this greater power, the Triforce of Power, and they tell that from the Deku Tree, like this mystical little being, you know, kind of like the old man Gandalf character of the series from early on. Like all of those elements could be like a really good like starting point in terms of the setting for a good fantasy adventure movie, right? But in terms of the progress, like how do you get from the beginning to end, that's where it's going to be hard figuring out, not the beginning, not the end, like how does he get to that end point in his adventure, and how does it represent Zelda? Because Zelda is traveling, visiting villages, but mainly it's about the dungeons, right? So how do you make a dungeon explorer a medieval fantasy story? You know, it's a little weird. I guess you base it off more like Breath of the Wild, where there wasn't as much of a focus on dungeons as it was just kind of exploring the world. I guess
you might see them try to turn dungeons into tombs almost, like
yeah, that's what they would be, 100%, which would be
like an Indiana Jones type situation, but like with medieval setting, I guess.
Maybe that's what you would have to do. Fantasy medieval Indiana Jones. I guess that's what it would have to be, with sword fighting and giant bosses.
And let's not have a whole scene of him pushing blocks to activate switches.
No, maybe if there's a couple montages or something, I guess. You know, one thing they could do, right, is that they could, because a big part of Zelda is getting stronger as you progress, right? Getting these items and abilities, right? Because you need to get strong enough to beat the evil at the end, right? So maybe they set it in a situation where you know that you have to fight Ganon or Ganondorf for some sort of evil at the end, right? And you know you have to save the princess, but you have to build up towards that. So maybe Link does have an actual like character that he navigates with, and there are a couple training / dungeon montages where the point is to train and get stronger throughout the game. So they'll have montages where they'll briefly show him moving a block, moving around dungeons, Navi or some sort of character like that, instructing and coaching him throughout the adventure. If they do that a little bit in between like major story beats when he goes to different villages or towns or interacts with the princess and things like that, I think they could make a good story. It would be challenging. Oh man, you know what we would have to do? I think we would need to like watch like movies that are more about the adventure, right? But not like movies that are dealing with a whole bunch of people, more like exploring like nature and dungeons. Like we would have to look at those, what worked with those, and like kind of think about how you could fit that into what would make sense for a Zelda movie.
Yeah, it kind of would have to go in that direction, honestly. And there's like they could also kind of expand on certain things if they wanted to, like talk more about the Civil War thing that was going on in Ocarina, or like different things like that. Because Marvel movies they're the same stories, but they're tweaked a bit. So they could do something like that if it kind of helped the narrative a bit. But let's, keep in mind that we don't want a classic video game adaptation situation where they tweak it so much to the point where it's near unrecognizable.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like they have to find that balance.
I think one interesting thing they could do is introduce multiple storylines. So you have the one storyline of Link adventuring throughout Hyrule, meeting different people, going to different tombs, getting stronger, building up to save Hyrule at some point, right? But maybe he doesn't know exactly how he's going to save Hyrule yet. So maybe you also have like a political struggle going on between Princess Zelda and the Gerudo and the Zoras. So you can have these different tribes. It could make it kind of like Game of Thrones, where it's kind of like a Game of Thrones, where you have these different like families, right? So instead of it being the Starks and the Winterfell and the Targaryens, it's the Gorons, the Zora, the Gerudo, the Hylians. So you have these different characters from these different factions of the world, and they have their own scenes and interactions. It's kind of like a political struggle. It's kind of like a setting for a civil war of some sort, right? And meanwhile, Link, the hero who's going to save everyone at the end, be the savior for the world, is intertwined into all this struggle, and it's affecting his adventure. So you're cutting between different scenes of the political struggle from different factions, but also seeing Link's adventure as he gets stronger throughout. Like, that would require really good writing, right? Because then you have to create these different characters, these different histories from the different tribes, and they would have to interact with each other. But I think that could be like a series even.
Yeah, they could do that, and they would need somebody who knows the source material pretty well to help out with that whole thing. Like with Detective Pikachu, they had, was it Ken Sugimori on like he was there helping them out with the whole thing. So I think they would need somebody like that to also keep them on the right track and not, completely deviate from what makes Zelda Zelda. At the same time, though, if they want to play it easy, they can kind of just base off their Zelda movie on one of the most linear Zelda experiences we've had.
Skyward Sword.
Skyward Sword.
Yeah.
Because Skyward Sword isn't really open-ended. It's not a bad game by any means. It's a good game. It's just
but it's more linear, and it's very story. Like if you just put all the cutscenes together, like you almost kind of have a movie already, right?
Right. So they can take that and then I don't know, add in like the
dungeon crawling, like the Tomb Raider-esque Indiana Jones portions, like in between the different story beats.
Right. So if anything, they can get experimental and make like a totally unique thing based on Ocarina of Time or all these different games. But if they want to take the safe route, Skyward Sword is there, and Skyward Sword has a good story. It's an origin story, so it would also make people who are unfamiliar with Zelda suddenly understand Zelda a little better and know the whole thing. And at the same time, it kind of doesn't require too much tweaking.
And you know what? I would agree with you. That's probably the better route, because while the idea I have, I feel like could be amazing if it's done right, the likelihood of it being done right are so freaking low that it's probably a lot smarter to go with something simpler, like what they did with Detective Pikachu. It was smart what they did. They picked Detective Pikachu instead of a mainline like Pokemon game, because it's a lot easier to translate the story of Detective Pikachu into a movie rather than the entire what transpires within a whole Pokemon adventure, right? So just looking at the different games and looking at which ones would represent a story movie more is probably a much better mold, and especially if it's their first go around, that's probably the better way to go. But maybe, if they get the first Zelda movie out there and it's pretty good, like the same way they've done with Detective Pikachu, they can then start thinking about, okay, maybe we can make another one, and it's like more of a gradual process to something a bit more sophisticated, rather than, trying to do it all at once, creating this masterful Origins movie with a very sophisticated plot in just one shot.
Right, and the only real, I guess, complication they would have if they decided to go the route of Skyward Sword is the fact that if they hypothetically wanted to make a sequel, because from that point you have to kind of explain the idea of the whole reincarnation thing, right, and the soul of the hero and all that. Like they would have to explain that in the Skyward Sword movie and make sure that's clear.
I would make the argument that you don't have to actually. So look at what they do with the Spider-Man movies, right? Like every 5 years, it seems like they just reboot Spider-Man, right? That's how it feels. Like when if they make the first Zelda movie, let's say it is just straight up based off Skyward Sword, right? There could be some things like, like for example, the end Demise, like he literally at the end of the movie, at the end of Skyward Sword, Demise curses Link and Zelda to experience like his hatred for generations, right? Implying the reincarnation of Demise for every single Zelda game. So that would be it for that. But even if they didn't like completely copy Skyward Sword at the beginning of every Zelda game, which is kind of like a reboot, and maybe you learn throughout the story, like those could be some of the major story beats. Oh, you're actually a reincarnation of the spirit of the hero, right? Maybe you don't even know you're Link in the beginning, right? Like maybe at first, like it doesn't even seem like it's straight up a Zelda game because you're just called Link, but there's no one telling you you're the hero. It's just bad things are happening to your village and you want to protect your village. And it's only after you do different things you learn more about your destiny and who you're meant to become.
I think, I'm not sure. I feel that the idea of the soul of the hero has to be explained primarily because like if they wanted to do the whole well,
I think it should be explained. I just mean like I don't think you would have to. It could be explained throughout the story, right? You not necessarily right at the beginning or in the prior movie.
I don't know. I feel like it has to kind of be in the first movie, because the reason why is because the Spider-Man situation is because it's a whole different universe thing, and it's like that's completely separate Spider-Men, I guess you would call it.
Right.
But the thing with Link is that that's all one continuity. That's all one continuity, until you get to the split timeline thing. But that's for the most part all one continuity. So I feel that it's kind of important, especially for when you get to the end with Demise. Because if you don't explain that in the movie that's basically Skyward Sword, and then Demise says that curse thing, they're not really going to understand what that means until they do the next movie. And
I
if
understand.
yeah, you know, and then if they do the whole Super Smash Brothers thing, you're gonna have 3 links. So it'd be pretty much a good idea to have that already pre-established before you get to that point.
Mhm.
So I feel like the earlier you explain that, the better it is. I feel. And I don't mean like they just, you know, read off the Hyrule Historia in front of you, but I mean, you know, they could say throughout the story of Skyward Sword, you know.
Well, the only reason I disagree that it has to be done in the beginning is that sometimes I think it's really interesting when you watch a movie or even a TV show and you just don't know quite what's going on, right? You're put into that and you're like, oh, what's going on? And because you don't know what's going on, you're forced to try to figure it out, and it kind of keeps you more engaged. It's kind of something that a lot of movies do. Like, they put you into an environment and you're trying to figure out what's going on. So my thing is that I think they should explain it. I just don't think it needs to happen in the beginning of a movie. And it, or even if there's an origin story, like I said, if as long as it's explained at some point, I think it's okay, right? But that's like something that's like requires sophisticated storytelling. If they're going for something more simple, like which I agree with you is probably the better route than maybe that they just explain it pretty obviously in the first movie and then that's it.
Right. I just feel like a lot of the things that are tied to the lore of Zelda, like the Triforce, the reincarnation, the cursing, like not cursing, but you know, the curse from demise.
Right.
A lot of those things I feel needs to be established within the Skyward Sword movie. And considering that it's a movie and they can cut out a lot of the dungeon crawling, I think they would have like the time to do it. They just need to do it right.
And you know what? If you think about what happens for the beginning of every Star Wars movie, they have all this like text explaining the situation, right? So I'm not saying they would do that, but think about what they do at the beginning of the Wind Waker and Skyward Sword, where they have like a tapestry and it shows these different designs and there's text. Like they could do something like that, where at the beginning of the movie, it just shows like these different like old text and images, you know, that looks like it's from some sort of ancient scroll telling the history of Hyrule, and they could do that for the like I guess like the forward for the movie, right? Kind of explaining the situation that there's a reincarnating hero and it is his history, it is his destiny every 100 or so years to stop the reincarnating hatred of demise. Like they could explain that in the beginning of a movie, like with that whole scroll like thing, you know, kind of like what I just explained, like they always do in Star Wars, where they explain the context of what's going on in that episode.
I would prefer if they didn't, to be honest, though. I feel like showing it rather than telling is a better way of dealing with things. And again, like,
well, not just like there would be imagery. There would
right,
still be imagery like what they did in Skyward Sword and the Wind Waker.
right. I mean, they could go that route, but again, it does depend totally on if they do decide to make like a totally original story based on Zelda, or if it's, you know, based on some game of some form. Because if it's based on a game, then yeah, they can do that whole thing, explain everything. But if it's a new story, then it might change things a little bit to try to like explain it to even people who are already.
Well, let me bring something else up. They do it in a lot of anime as well, like One Piece, Seven Deadly Sins, Fairy Tale. Like they have like the beginning, like they explain like what the world is. Like they do it every episode for like 2 minutes. So something like that I think could work, and it wouldn't be annoying because it would just be for the one movie, not for every single episode of an anime, re-explaining the exact same thing. But I've seen examples of it where it works, so I think it's just one way, right? There's different ways you can handle it, but you know, there's a lot.
I mean, they can approach it from any way. Honestly, there's a lot of room for in there. I just feel that because Skyward Sword, and again, Skyward Sword is a good game. You know, when I say that it's linear, I don't mean it like, you know, in a negative connotation.
No, it's just it's linear progression. Yeah, that's what it is.
Things that are linear have more of a focused story, and because they have more of a focused story, a movie can kind of adapt it a little better. But again, they could go with a totally original thing, and I mean, it's kind of hard to say.
I agree with you though that if they're gonna make a Zelda story, looking at what they did with Skyward Sword is the right route. What they did with Breath of the Wild, like, no, they should not model the story after Breath of the Wild. Like, I would prefer if it's a unique story, right? Because pretty much every Zelda game is like a new Link in a new era. Like, I would kind of prefer that for the movie, but I do think explaining those tropes of the Zelda series makes sense. So, But we're not even. This is not even a Zelda topic. We made it to a Zelda topic. We need to move forward. So I'm gonna check in with the chat to kind of close out the Detective Pikachu discussion. But I guess the whole point is that I like what they did with Detective Pikachu and the groundwork they did with the Pokemon. That I think they could accomplish a lot with future Pokemon movies. And I think this is because it's like the first like pretty decent actual video game movie. It could pave the way forward for other good Nintendo movies, right? Like we know there's a Mario movie in the works as well. Let's not talk about the Sega movie. That's not Nintendo. It's a Sonic movie, and it's probably gonna be terrible. So, unfortunately, that's probably what it's gonna be. Computer robots. Try not. No, don't spoil it in the chat. That's not a good idea. I should have a spoiler discussion at some point, though. That might be a good idea to talk, so we can talk about the movie more in depth. Sabbath. I heard that they want the next movie to focus on Jigglypuff. That'd be interesting.
I heard about that. Something singing. Is it like a singing competition?
It could
sort of thing.
I didn't read about this, but I like the idea of focusing on a whole different Pokemon, explaining a completely different angle and its own story and progression. Like I like that. It's a good idea. Mastermind said the movie made him wish the Pokemon could be real. For real, they were really, really well done. Really well done. Yeah, Joe, I talked about earlier, the directors were asked about a Smash Bros. Movie, and they said they would need to have more standalone movies before they said it would be a dream to make a Zelda movie. Yeah, which is it started this whole discussion, basically, making origin movies for the different Nintendo games.
I see Jug saying linearity isn't always good. Look at Final Fantasy 13. It's not that it's always good, it's that some games benefit from being linear. Some games are good because they're linear, because it allows them to like kind of control the story more, and it's more focused.
I would say with Skyward Sword was actually worse for being linear. I think Zelda more often than not should be open because it's about the fantasy world and exploring it, right? That's kind of like the big focus for Zelda exploration. But I also think Skyward Sword had the best story because it was linear, right? Linearity is best for storytelling. So when it comes to like RPGs that really focused on stories, like Final Fantasy, usually the linearity helps it have a good story. There's always exceptions.
Of course you'll have like, linear games that are bad. In the same way that you'll have open world games that are bad, Mm-hmm. But I think everyone can admit that while Breath of the Wild is one of my favorite games ever, it doesn't exactly have the strongest story. And that has a lot to do with the fact that they don't know when you're gonna go where you go to get that piece of the story. So they just kept it very fragmented and kind of just like you get it whenever.
Yeah, and I would say that I don't want to say that like I've said it, but I would prefer not to say that Breath of the Wild has a bad story because I think there's a good story in there. It's just not a well-told story. If that makes any sense. Like I like the history and I like the characters. I just think they could have been told and there could have been more told about them, right? Like, which is why I really appreciated the DLC, the Champions Ballad, because we got to see more of those character interactions. But obviously, the way they presented it, I just don't think was good for an open world Zelda game.
Right, and again, like Mandy Lee Plays is mentioning in the chat,
Mandy's here.
Detective Pikachu specifically is a good game to make into a movie.
Right.
Because while, sure, the story in the game is not the best, but because it's linear, it's better for a movie than it would be like a regular Pokemon game where you have a no-name kid just, exploring with Pokemon. Like that's so open-ended that it's a more of a challenge to like turn it into a linear 2-hour film. That's why I think Skyward Sword would be a good, what's the word, like adaptation.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm with you there. But I'm just saying that if they were, I think it's a good mold, but I think what they'll do is they'll just maybe look at Skyward Sword if they were ever to make a Zelda movie and think, okay, so this is a good mold and this is a good starting point for how we would make a movie, but I don't think it would be based off Skyward Sword. I don't think it would be an adapted Skyward Sword story. I think they would just look at how the Skyward Sword story was structured, and then they would make a new Zelda movie based off that. That's how I think they would do it, but again, it could be easier just completely modeling the story like you're saying, like they did with Detective Pikachu.
Right. It would be a much easier adaptation rather than like making a movie out of Breath of the Wild would be super difficult.
You need to make it like
like 90% of the movie would just be like the side quests you do in the game, kind of, and the main story, and everything else, like, I don't know. Like, I doubt they'd make like half of the movie Korok seed hunting and.
Well, I think part of the problem isn't so much that there isn't like an interest in making a Zelda movie. Like, I think there have been multiple tries by different people within the Hollywood industry, the movie industry, or even the TV industry to make a movie or series for Zelda, but they come up with plans, they introduce it to Nintendo, and Nintendo doesn't like it. And I mean, we've heard about this a few times for Metroid, right? And we've seen some murmurings for Zelda as well. And I think the problem is that everyone tries to come up with a good like story for Zelda or Metroid, but Nintendo hasn't really okayed anything because they're not really confident that what they're actually come up with would be a good movie. So, I hope that if and when there is a Zelda movie, that they do have a good plan for it. And I think, as you've been saying, Shifty, that it is probably better to take the more simpler route, because these are complicated things. Video game to movie adaptations are not easy to do because only one of them has been good, right? So we'll see. Probably a while from now. But hey, I do think the Mario movie is gonna be good because Shigeru Miyamoto has he has a very in-depth, he's very hands-on for the development of this movie, right? And technically, it's not even confirmed the movie is gonna be coming out yet. I think that's they're still in the planning stages. So those planning stages may fall through, but we've heard it talked about multiple times already. So I think if there's any sort of Nintendo movie that's gonna happen, it's gonna be this Mario movie. We already know that they're working with the studio that made
Minions.
Yeah, the Minions, right? So
Illumination.
Thank you. We'll see what happens with that. Maybe we'll get a trailer next year, or I don't know if that's too soon, but
I mean, I don't. Do we even know when it's releasing? I mean, if we knew, we probably
it's years away. It's years away if it's happening. So yeah, probably next year is too soon. Maybe a couple of years from now. We'll probably get a sequel to Detective Pikachu before we get the Mario movie. Because they already have the groundwork set for a Pokemon movie, right? They already have all those models. Like, I think it's more likely that they just jump into the development for the next movie, because it looks like Detective Pikachu is doing really well in the box office. So,
I don't know. I think we would see Mario before another Pokemon movie.
Want to bet on it?
we could.
100 gold points.
Well, I'll bet you my entire bank account. No,
I don't want to bet anything because it's so hard to. I don't know. I think it's reasonable to think that Mario will come first because we've heard things about the Mario movie already. We haven't heard anything about the second Pokemon movie. But
unless that Jigglypuff thing has more credit than we realize.
Yeah, like if they just jump into filming immediately, like if the plans get okayed immediately because of all the numbers they're already seeing from the Detective Pikachu, they'll probably start filming the Pokemon movie first. That's what I'm saying. Like if they already have an idea, like they might jump into it because they're already seeing the money for it. You know what I mean? Like money talks, right? So if they see all that money already coming from a Pokemon movie, they're probably gonna feel a lot more comfortable about focusing on another Pokemon movie very quickly rather than jumping into the filming and development for a Mario movie. If that makes any sense.
I mean, yeah, but we also have to realize how much of a moneymaker Mario is on its own usually.
A lot. That's why they're working on both.
Right, and I'm pretty sure like
think about
Mario's
it.
coming first.
The first two franchises that are gonna get movies from Nintendo are gonna be Mario and Pokemon. Like, there's a reason it's Mario and Pokemon, because those are the two franchises that Nintendo has that will for sure appeal to the mainstream audience, right? Thus having the most potential for making money. That's why it's happening. So, I mean, like I said, I don't really know if the next Pokemon movie will come up before the Mario movie. I'm just saying that we're a few years away from the Mario movie. But
I don't know. I'm still thinking Mario's gonna come first.
But first could be 3 years from now. The Pokemon movie could come out 4 years from now.
And hey, I'd still be right.
You'd still be right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because I'm not making a prediction on the year, because that's a whole other kind of worms that I don't know about.
Yeah. Stab64 asked, did I watch it with someone? Yes, I did. I watched it with a friend. Computer Robots. Smash needs a Justice League story vibe and not talking that god-awful 2017 movie. Smash movie would be... We've been talking about... I would love to see that at some point. But that would be such a huge, huge undertaking. They would have to make, as we've been talking about, really good intro movies for all these other characters. Yeah, Plays does not want a Zelda movie, apparently.
I mean, Zelda is like one of those difficult ones, right?
It
Like you can, like I could see a movie happening pretty easily if we're talking Metroid. If we're talking like, I mean, if we're going by Smash, I would, I don't know if they're talking like third parties also, but like Metal Gear Solid is already getting a movie
I
apparently,
think
and
Zelda. There should be a Zelda anime before this is a Zelda movie.
probably yeah, you can get away with a lot more on anime.
Like, there's a lot of animes right now that are really into the fantasy medieval genre already. Like, there's Goblin Slayer, and you have there's a whole bunch of different Slayer styles. I realized I only brought up Goblin Slayer, but there's even like Sword Art Online, for example. Like, there's already kind of like a template for that. Now, it wouldn't exactly be Zelda, but if you look at how they handled Demon Slayer, Goblin Slayer, mostly Goblin Slayer, there's actual like tombs and dungeons they go into, several of them throughout the story. So, looking at how that's structured, I think they could definitely make like a Zelda anime kind of like that.
I think an anime is like a lot more like it. I think it'd be a lot easier for them because anime doesn't really typically demand as much from the viewer as a live action adaptation does, or at least like viewers hit uncanny valley a lot quicker than like
The audience,
live action adaptation.
the audience that watches an anime doesn't need as much explanation as like a mainstream Hollywood audience would, right? And then also within a movie, you have like 2 hours to explain what's going on in a world. With an anime, you have however many episodes you need. You know,
Right.
so
And
it's you have more time.
it's also accepted for the most part in anime for you to kind of directly explain something where you have entire scenes in anime where it's just a character giving you like just a wall of
Information.
like exposition, right? Like this,
Do you remember Naruto when they would like explain like the chakra system?
they would
like,
stop mid-fight to explain.
they have
how certain
diagrams and
things work.
everything. Yeah.
And that's accepted in anime. Like you can
Yeah.
just get away with that. But if you do that in a big budget movie in theaters, people don't like that as much. They don't really
Yeah.
get away with it as much. So if it's an anime, then they can get away with a lot more quality-wise. I feel like people are not gonna.
And it can be a Netflix anime. It doesn't have to be on Crunchyroll. And if it's on Netflix, it would reach a large audience.
Right. So they could do that. But I feel that if we're on the topic of like Super Smash Brothers intro origin movies, it's not gonna be that way unless they do some Who Framed Roger Rabbit type thing and have like this animation mixed with live action thing, kind of like Pikachu and the Illuminations Mario with anime Zelda. Like I feel like that'd be such a weird mix. But then again, I guess Smash is that already. So, I don't know. I just don't know if that would work in a movie in that way. I feel like everything would have to be either live action or everything would have to be animation or something. So I don't really see it doing that too much. I don't know. Maybe it will, but I just don't know.
I think we should move on because we're an hour and a half in and we still have 3 other topics.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. But, I mean, I guess we agree we both would rather see a Zelda anime rather than a movie.
I'm iffy on both, to be honest, but I feel that the anime would be easier.
Yeah, I mean, if you make like a Smash movie, none of this is confirmed. This is all speculation. It may never happen. Why are you even talking about it? Because it's fun. That's why we're talking about it. But we have other things to talk about. I can see how this could be like its own topic. There's a fair bit of things in the chat, guys, so I'll try and get back into it after this next topic, because we have a lot to cover and not that much time yet. So, I guess all these others are a bit shorter, though, so we may end up coming full circle. But the E3 plans have been revealed. Nothing too crazy. Basically, Nintendo's going to have a few tournaments. Then we're going to get the June Direct. I mean, the E3 Direct on June 11th. And then after that, it's going to be a whole bunch of Treehouse footage. I'll just quickly bring up the actual tweet, though. One thing that was interesting to me though is that they didn't specify they were going to talk about one particular game, like they have in the last few years, where it was like said that they're going to be focusing on a particular game.
Right, which means it could be varied for the most part, unless they are focusing on a game, but it's just an unannounced game.
That'd be crazy. Oh
Yeah,
my god.
I don't know what
don't get me excited like that. How dare you?
I mean, we know there are stuff that they just haven't announced, especially with the whole Retro Game Studios secret robot character.
What if we walk in, it's this whole other crazy world, man, and we're like, what is this? When I say we walk in, I'm not gonna walk in. I'm not gonna go to E3 this year. It's too late for that. But you know, oh man, or you're gonna see like little pictures of random like we don't know what, and we're like, what is Nintendo doing back there? Like, cause you know, every year there's some people who are putting up the E3 booth. There's a couple of like snapshots that people supposedly take, right? Like, what if we see like some random stuff? He's like, oh, what is that? What could that be? We're not gonna know.
They could do that. I don't honestly. I think it's more likely that we'll see like some kind of unannounced game, but we're not gonna see like a whole
theme.
30-minute focus on that game. We're probably just gonna see like new announcements. I'm confident on this though. The very first game they're gonna show off is gonna be a new game.
Do they go?
I think so, because they've been doing that lately. Last year we had Daemon X Machina open up the show.
You did? That's true. What happened the year before that?
The year before what was the year before that? I don't remember.
I'm gonna look it up real quick.
Because I feel like they could do that again.
E3 2018 Nintendo Direct. E3 2018. No, 17.
Yeah, 17. Because 18 had that was Smash, Daemon X Machina.
Yeah, I remember them starting with Daemon X Machina for last year.
Yeah, and everyone was confused. I could see them doing something like that, especially since they're not talking about any kind of focus, and I'm pretty sure they're gonna want to get people's attention immediately. So they're gonna either announce a new game or they're gonna show off a big anticipated game. It'd have to be one of those two, I think. If not a new game, some kind of hyped game they know is gonna sell, or maybe the first review of a game that they announced prior and they just haven't shown it before. I just don't think they're gonna start us off with a game that we've seen a lot of trailers before or anything like that.
Yeah, well, right now I'm looking at I'll put this right here.
Mm-hmm.
What we're gonna show at the beginning is a trailer showing off different games. They start off the montage trailer, E3 2017.
Okay.
But did they announce anything at E3 2017?
I don't know. I barely remember this.
I remember it, but I needed to see it to remember it.
Oh, was it? No, was Rocket League a thing before?
Rocket League was not confirmed, so they like obviously pseudo announced it by putting it in the trailer.
Right. So I guess that could technically be it then.
You know what? I don't think it will be, but I think there's a possibility that could be the case because I just realized I probably ruined the audio. Sorry, guys. But the reason why I think that could be the case is because you look at how many games are coming out this year. Maybe the reason why a particular game wasn't said to be focused on is because they're just going to focus on multiple games. Right? That doesn't mean that they won't have an interesting show floor. Maybe they'll just pull things from all the different franchises and put it in there, like smaller sections rather than one big section, you know, but that represents one franchise, but rather multiple. That could be how they handle it. But it's just because they have so much to talk about, it may be better they just talk about a whole bunch of other games. So maybe having a montage at the beginning of the show is what they're going to do. I don't think that's what we're going to do. I think they're just going to like talk about each game, right? I think the ones that we know more about, they'll probably have shorter trailers, right? Like, for example, Fire Emblem and like Mario Maker. We've already gotten multiple trailers on those already. So I think they'll just be featured during the Treehouse, and we'll just get like small pieces for them. But for games like Luigi's Mansion 3 and Animal Crossing, where we know like nothing, they're going to focus on those during the actual Direct. And we'll get like multiple minutes of those.
Yeah, I agree with that. I still do think that they're gonna start off with some kind of reveal,
something to hype us up,
capacity, right? Because it could be something like Rocket League, where it's like a small popular indie game or something, right? Because that's before that point, we didn't know Rocket League was going to be on Switch.
You want to know what I think it's gonna be?
What's that?
I think the two things they're gonna either open or close with Smash DLC or Animal Crossing gameplay. Like, so this is how I see it. So like, I think, let's say that there's like three things I think could happen. They have a new game reveal, Animal Crossing gameplay reveal, or a Smash DLC reveal, and any one of those three could happen in either the beginning or the end. Obviously, one of them won't be, but for sure, at least one of, you notice how I'm trying to say, like, beginning could either be a new game reveal, like you're saying, or they reveal the final, not the final, but the next Smash DLC character, or they open up revealing Animal Crossing gameplay, and then at the end, they either show off one final game, or they reveal. I think maybe they'll open up the show floor, the actual direct talking about Animal Crossing. They'll show a gameplay for Animal Crossing, then maybe they'll close things out with a DLC character reveal. Let's just say a Banjo-Kazooie trailer.
Right, and keep in mind that when I say reveal for the beginning, I do mean like any brand new thing. Like the first reveal of Animal Crossing could be something along those lines that I think is very possible.
Yeah.
And the same goes for like a new game.
Okay, yeah.
Like I just feel like they're gonna start with
something new. Yeah, then we both agree on that.
Yeah, like a brand new reveal of some kind. And
okay.
I think Animal Crossing is very possible for that because we haven't seen a single, like, we haven't even seen like a screenshot.
Only announced game this year that's being published by Nintendo that we have zero gameplay for. Everything else we have some gameplay for.
We haven't even seen a screenshot of the game.
Nope,
like there's nothing. So that's totally possible, and I'd be surprised if it's not there.
You can book it. Animal Crossing will be revealed at E3. Every previous Animal Crossing has been revealed at E3. This time is not going to be any different. It's going to be revealed at E3. It's been reconfirmed to be coming out this year. I don't think Animal Crossing fans have anything to worry about. You're going to see Animal Crossing at E3. I'll bet $1 million.
Right. Like it'd be just
shocking.
Unbelievable to me if they just did not have it. It would have to be some like super soon direct or something that they would show off Animal Crossing if it's not at E3. I just don't see that happening though.
It's gonna 100% be at E3. It's gonna happen.
Right.
99.9999%. Like it's never 100, but you know, like it's super likely. Yeah. I guess I'm interested with the Treehouse because there's a lot of games that Nintendo has already announced, and I just kind of want to learn about them more in depth, like just to see them, right? I do want there to be surprises at the Direct, which is why I do think they'll probably show off a couple new things. But I don't expect not too much because this year's already stacked.
Right. And I guess this is kind of like merging topics almost, but I do think that they're gonna have some kind of small focus on third parties also.
Yeah.
Because especially if, because a lot of people do believe that, like, the Smash DLC characters are going to be third-party characters, and it will be these specific third-party characters because they have games coming out for Switch.
Yeah.
So I could see all of that kind of, tying together and just going, hey, look, by the way, Doom Eternal is coming for Switch, and, why not also get Doom Guy while you're at it?
Yeah, that's something they could do. I feel like that's something that's going to happen later in the year for Doom Guy if he's happening. Mainly just because I think there's going to be a Microsoft character that's shown off at this E3. Like, I feel fairly confident about that because we know, like, one, there's like this increased focus on both Microsoft and Nintendo because Sony's gone. Square is not representing at the show either, right? So, like, I think it's a really big opportunity for Nintendo and Microsoft to showcase something together if there is anything together. So actually, it might even make more sense to not open the show with Animal Crossing, but rather open the show with a DLC character reveal. Let's just say, for the sake of my argument, Banjo and Kazooie, right? They show off Banjo-Kazooie as a DLC character, but they use that as a segue into announcing multiple Microsoft published games on the Nintendo Switch. Let's say Ori hasn't been confirmed yet, right? So maybe Ori, maybe Master Chief Collection, right? Maybe a rare replay, which would fit really well considering that Banjo would have been just revealed in this hypothetical. And that would be an amazing way to start everything off. People would be like hyped, right? And then that's one way they could do it, or they could end the show. But I feel like by starting off with a Smash DLC character, like you said, a third-party DLC character, it really opens things up to talk about some third-party stuff as well.
Right, and I could see them having like a whole little, because you know they always make their directs like kind of entertaining in some way. So I could see them just having like Phil Spencer of Microsoft in the direct or something, just to be like, oh hey, our partnership with Nintendo is making this possible, and blah blah blah, and then we announce Minecraft Steve.
It works. It works. That's
I know how much you hate that idea, but you know
it is a possibility that I will acknowledge. I will not deny that.
Yeah. It is a very possible thing.
And I think it would be really cool to have Phil Spencer on a Nintendo Direct. That would be insane. It'd be really cool to see.
Right,
Sure.
and I mean, who knows? You might even see like Miyamoto walk up to like the Xbox like conference thing, like what happened with Ubisoft with the CEO and all that. Like they can have like a whole thing like that.
So I could see that if Microsoft is announcing a game for the Nintendo Switch, right? During their conference.
Right.
I don't think Miyamoto would come on the show floor and talk about a game on Xbox.
No. I don't think that either.
Right.
But we've heard a lot of rumors about games from Xbox coming to Switch, right? So we can see those games coming to Switch on the Nintendo Direct, right?
Yeah,
and
they might talk about them at the Microsoft one.
But here's what I'm thinking, though. I'm thinking they could put the games on Switch, show that in Nintendo Direct, and then coincide that with either Banjo or Steve, whichever one you want to go with. And then in the actual Xbox conference, they can announce Xbox Live for Switch. Because we have also heard about Game Pass and Xbox Live as a whole.
And maybe Shigeru Miyamoto could come and demo it running on Switch.
Yeah, something like that.
Actually, when is the Xbox conference? Is it before or after?
They're usually before, because I'm used to just thinking Nintendo was last.
Right,
yeah.
So because Nintendo's last, I don't think they would showcase anything that Nintendo's going to reveal at the Direct. It would,
right. Which is why I think they would sooner announce Xbox Live coming, like the service itself coming to Switch, and then possibly when you get to the Nintendo Direct, like I think like the day after or so, that's when they'll show Game Pass, and then they'll show Ori running on it, or Master Chief Collection, or Rare Replay, or any of these different games.
I just think, I think a good example is what they did with Star Fox with Ubisoft, right? That was shown off before the Direct, right? Last year, or the year before.
Yeah, I think so.
No, it was last year, right? It was last year when we got the Starlink Star Fox content announced.
Yeah, that's actually when I first played it.
And then announced, the announcement was before Nintendo's presentation. So there could be something like that,
Right. Some kind of third party, like.
I don't think it'll be related to Smash though. So if there is like some sort of third party game associated with a third party character that's gonna be announced at E3, I don't think that third party game will be shown off in Microsoft's conference. But let's say, like, it could be Master Chief Collection, but it's such an epic thing. I don't know. I wonder if Nintendo will want to save that for their own presentation. But like, maybe it's not that epic because it is kind of an old port already. But there's gonna be a PC version soon, so.
Right. I mean, it depends, because like Bethesda, for example, looks at Skyrim as like one of their biggest successes, right?
Yep.
And they didn't announce, like Bethesda wasn't the one to announce Skyrim for Switch.
Right.
That was Nintendo. So yep. I'm thinking, if I go along that same logic, Microsoft looks at the Halo series as a huge success, and if they port an old game, or old games in this case, to Switch, it probably would still be announced by Nintendo, I think. If I just go off of that same like logic, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. I like your idea that maybe there'll be something going on in the Microsoft conference. Maybe Shigeru Miyamoto comes on to demo something, maybe Xbox Live, like you said, and then Nintendo has a couple actual Microsoft published games announced for the Switch. Maybe that also includes Smash DLC. I'm gonna try and move on because we're running low on time. Let me see here. What's going on? I see Joe's McGee added me. I remember seeing in the Nintendo store that day, they took the day off from work to see. What do you guys talk? Mario Rabbids 2? What?
Well, I think Jugs was saying that he was at the store during E3.
Oh, okay. Yeah. See, the thing is, my perception of time is terrible. So.
Yeah. I've never gone to the store for the Direct, because I always want to be able to hear everything, and people get so excited that I can't hear anything anymore.
Yeah, I'd rather just watch it at home because I can understand everything that's going on.
Yeah, that's just how it is, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So
No.
let's briefly touch on the third party thing, which we've already been kind of talking about a little bit. Uh, so the reason I brought it up is because Sean had added me on Twitter from On64 to talk about maybe this news on Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, which I'm not going to talk about. Sorry, buddy. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about it, but just in the sense that the reason why the Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 is coming to the Nintendo Switch is because Nintendo brought them, the creators, a dev kit early on before Switch even came out. And I thought about it, and when they saw the Switch and what it could do, they decided that it was better that Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 would be on the Switch because that's better for what Marvel Ultimate Alliance is, right? Like it does look like the kind of game that's very arcadey that you can play in spurts. You know, with the Switch is it's a portable system. It's more for that. So when you look at a lot of the third parties that are putting games on the Switch, whenever you hear them talk about it, they don't really talk about it as if it's a home console. They talk about it as if it's a portable system that can handle their typical home console game. And that's really what it comes down to, I think. The portability of the system is just... It's a powerful portable system, so a lot of third parties are thinking, man, we finally have a system where we can put the image and idea of our game without it being too gimped. Right, like that's it. Really, the Switch is capable of somewhat realizing the visions for a lot of these higher profile games, even when it's portable.
Right, and I think what also helps a lot is that the nature of the game itself is a very co-op based game. Because if I remember correctly, because I played the other Ultimate Alliance games, and no matter what mission you're doing, you always have teammates with you, and you can drop in at any time and drop out at any time.
Right, and
so,
like you said, works perfectly with the Switch because you can play multiplayer, not just you can't just. It's not just about playing anywhere. It's about playing anywhere, and not just singly, but also multiplayer wise as well.
Right. So online multiplayer in Marvel or Ultimate Alliance has always been a thing, and couch co-op has always been a thing, and every single mission has at least 3 other people with you. So no matter where you are, what you're doing, you're always going to be able to play the game with someone. And the Switch, considering you can always just pass a Joy-Con to someone, it's kind of perfect for it. And I know that's like an overused term at this point, but it kind of is for Marvel. Marvel, that game has been kind of built to be, accessible like that.
Yeah. I'm not gonna act as if I'm the biggest Marvel Ultimate Alliance fan, but I do remember playing the one that came out on Wii so many years ago. It was a good time, and if I remember it, it was something that you could like play in short or long bursts. It's very arcadey. You can. I think you kind of was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember there being like a scoring system, right? Like it wasn't just, it was kind of like a hack and slash, but you could try and perform better with each playthrough.
Yeah, this is a sort of like, it's like a, what do you want, like a beat 'em up basically.
Mm-hmm.
It's
right.
like a very like old school beat 'em up, but kind of like higher budget in a sense.
Yeah,
but
it's I thought they would have tried to come out with it a little bit earlier because of Endgame. I mean, I guess it's still like only a couple months afterwards, so it's not really that far off from the hype. But you know what I mean? Like I felt like they would have tried to really release around the same time to really pick up on the sales from the movie. Because think about whenever a big movie like that comes out, there's tons of toys and merchandising coming out for it because they're trying to take advantage of that wave of popularity. Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 is coming out a couple months afterwards. So I think that's a little weird, but I guess they're just doing it by necessity because the game's not ready yet.
I see your point, and I think it is about the game being ready. But at the same time, I do feel that as long as they put characters like Spider-Man and Thanos on the front cover and make it, or maybe even on the back, as long as they do that, with how well the MCU has done introducing Thanos as a character and like how dangerous he is and all that, they probably will still get a good amount of sales from people who saw the film. Yeah. Like it's not that. It's not really that far ahead, and as long as they put recognizable faces in there, that kind of thing, I think they already have the box art finalized. I could be wrong. I don't even think Thanos is on the box art either.
I believe so, yeah.
I think it's kind of like relies on timing and familiar faces. So they're gonna see Wolverine, they're gonna see Spider-Man, and they're gonna go, "Oh, cool! I saw Endgame not that long ago. I'll pick this up and, fight Thanos again, or I can actually fight Thanos this time, I guess."
Right. Yeah, it kind of works. It's not actually a video game to movie adaptation, right? Or a movie to video game adaptation, I should say. It's not that, but it's using the same character, so it's going to still pick up from the lingering popularity of the movie.
Yeah, I think it's based more closely to the comics, but it's still its own thing.
Right. And because but it still has those names, so it'll still do really well, for sure. But just to kind of close off the third-party support topic, like, are there any particular games that you're anticipating from the third-party side of things that could be announced around E3 time?
Could be announced. That I'm not sure, because right now
or is there anything you would like to see for Switch that we haven't gotten yet?
Honest, that's third-party wise. That's hard to say. I'm the only game that comes to mind right now is Borderlands.
Okay.
I feel like, because I've played Borderlands 2 on Vita, and that was a nightmare. It was like 15 FPS majority of the time playing it on there. But if they can get Borderlands 3 on there, maybe not even Borderlands 3, maybe Handsome Collection or something along those lines. I don't know, but I think Borderlands would be a good idea for that game, for the Switch. But really, honestly, right now the only third-party game that I'm like really hyped up for is Borderlands 3 and Doom Eternal.
I'm pretty hyped for Doom Eternal. I'm really excited about that. But in terms of other third-party games I would like to see announced for the Switch, I mean, I talked about in my E3 predictions video, I want to see a Monster Hunter. I want to see a Soul Calibur game. I would love it if they were to announce a port of Resident Evil 2 remake, but I probably would love it more if I just played on PS4, because the game would probably have to be watered down quite a bit, unless the Switch Pro is around the corner and it could still run it pretty well. So I'm going to hold off on that one, but I would really like to see a new Monster Hunter game announced and some sort of Soul Calibur port as well.
I would actually, if we're talking old games getting ported over, or maybe like HD re-releases or anything like that, I would love if they took the original Xenoblade Chronicles and just remastered it essentially, and just ported that over.
Just to specify for people in the chat, Xenoblade is a first party game, but I would love to see that game ported over.
Yeah, it's like that's just me thinking like, oh, whatever. If I can have any game like re-released or ported, that like Xenoblade is the first thing that comes to mind.
Not Xenoblade X, the original Xenoblade.
The original, yeah. I mean, they could put X too. Like, I like X also, but I'm thinking like dream scenario, port whatever situation. So I'm just like, yep, original Xenoblade. Third party wise, my mind right now is just on Doom Eternal, which we already know about, and Borderlands. There might be other games that I would want, but I can't really think of it at the moment.
Right. I need to pick up Dragon's Dogma, actually. Looks really interesting. It's only $30.
Yeah, I need to get on that too, but I have a lot of games in my backlog as it is.
Yeah, I still need to finish Dark Souls, so I probably should finish that. But let's move on to the final topic. So, basically, I want to just pull up the interview so I don't butcher anything. Right, so there was a question asked, amid a significantly changing external environment, including cloud gaming and 5G, what are your thoughts on the future of Nintendo's core integrated hardware and software business? This was asked to Shuntaro Furukawa, and he responded, I don't think all games will move to the cloud right now, but the technology is steadily advancing. In the future, I expect the technology such as the cloud and streaming will evolve further as a way to deliver games to consumers. We must keep up with such changes in the environment. On the other hand, I believe that our core value, the unique entertainment experience that can only be achieved through the development of integrated hardware and software, will further increase in value. Delivering unique entertainment that only Nintendo can create will continue to be our top priority. So here, the president of Nintendo is acknowledging the growing, focus on cloud gaming, right? Like we got Google Stadia coming out. Xbox is definitely focusing on that as well. Our internet technology is improving, so the premise of streaming games and using 5G to play games is not as crazy as it was in the past. Like, it's becoming more reliable. So that is like a technology that Nintendo is here saying that they are aware of, and they will factor that into their plans going forward. But their thinking isn't so much that this sort of technology could replace their hardware. They're still thinking of ways to make it so their software and hardware work together and it's a unique experience. You look at what the Switch is. a big part of what the Switch's draw is the hardware. You can play most of the third-party games anywhere, right? You can play it on a tablet, you can play it on your computer, you can play it on your Xbox or PS4, but you can't play them like in different ways. Like the Switch has a changing form factor, right? Because you can go into tabletop mode, you can go into portable mode, you can go into dock mode, and it's all done seamlessly and comfortably. There isn't really any other device out in the market that can do it quite like that. So that kind of makes it a unique experience, and that's something that you can't just get by playing a game through your Google browser.
Right. I think that's more or less exactly what Nintendo has to do, because if we're talking just raw computing power, then doing something like that, which is kind of like where you've seen Xbox and PlayStation kind of head in, I guess, unless you count the VR, particularly with PlayStation, but that's the market that I feel is going to be hurt the most by cloud gaming, because at that point there's going to be a large amount of people who, when it gets to that point, when cloud gaming officially gets to the point where it's like really on point,
you don't need a powerful system, because the internet will just run a game from a super powerful computer, but there'll only be one of them rather than everyone having one.
Right. So it's for a certain demographic, for a certain market, it's gonna hurt those people, those companies that focus on that. But I guess Nintendo's looking at it from your perspective of like, they have to create hardware that streaming can't replicate, which would be, I guess, like the Wii, or like, I guess, the Wii U, even though it wasn't successful, or the Switch, like you mentioned. They would have to continue it, and like he said, evolve along with the market.
Right.
So it's kind of like, the way I look at it, if you have a good online connection and the streaming services are on point, the people that are going to be hurt the most are the people who want raw computing power.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the market that will be affected the most. But Nintendo for the most part, doesn't really go in there.
So one of the draws of the Switch is that it can play games portably, and when you're at home, there's the internet connection at home is typically a lot stronger than what you can do on the go, because on the go you can't have internet connection. You usually have to waste your data, right? And that's a limited amount of speed compared to what you can get at home. So the internet is even more limited when you're mobile. So like in terms of mobile play, the Switch has, or like Nintendo has a much larger amount of presence, because streaming games won't probably be a big deal for mobile gaming for a while, I feel like. So there's that element, but then just like, no matter what, you're going to want to use a controller, right? Like there's always going to be a controller for the games. So from that perspective, like, Nintendo could always be thinking about how you control, how you interact with your games, and you're still going to probably have a preferred way to play your games. Even if every like platform can run or stream a game, like you're going to have a preferred platform, like physical piece of media to use to play that particular game, even if it's all streaming, right? And looking at what the Switch is, it's offering different like physical ways to interact with your games. And that's probably, Nintendo's just always going to move in that direction of thinking of ways to interact with your games that are done physically that enhance the experience.
Right. And I think that is probably the best way of going about it, unless this, again, something I can't think of off the top of my head right now. But if you can't beat the raw computing power of whatever PC they have running the games for you over there, then your best bet is to do something that they can't do.
Right.
Which would be more or less the path that Nintendo's going in, and they've been going in for quite some time already.
Yeah, for sure. But what do you think where could they move on from the Switch? Like, how could they continue to stay relevant by updating what they've done with the Switch? Do you just make better functioning Joy-Cons, better battery, better screens, or is there anything else they could add that would allow them to stay relevant, even if we're to all 100% switch over to cloud gaming? Or is that all they need? Basically just a better Switch?
It's hard to say, because if you want the third-party games, you want the Switch to be, or I guess like what would be the Switch successor, it would have to be in the same kind of ballpark to get a lot of the third-party games. I mean, there will be some that will be fine, like it'll go back on there, like we see with like certain games that they're not as demanding, so you could just put them on there. But if cloud gaming takes over and we have these very powerful PCs kind of becoming the norm, then you might see third parties kind of like, jumping ship because their games can't seem to be kind of like downscaled for the Switch successor. So I think for the sake of keeping the third party part of it, they need to be within the same ballpark. But at the same time, they desperately need to make sure they make hardware that they kind of improves on the uniqueness of that console.
Yeah.
I
One
don't
thing.
know what in particular though.
Right. There are weird patents that Nintendo's had in the past. Like they've had the haptic feedback patents. Like remember those patents of a controller that was basically like there was no buttons. Like
Oh yeah.
I don't think they'll necessarily do that, but maybe in the future they have their screens have haptic feedback, right? Maybe, like for example, look at what they've done with Switch VR or Labo VR, I should say, or just like what they're doing with Labo, like these different functionalities. Like I think, first of all, if you think about everything you can do with a Switch, it's a lot, right? So maybe it's continually improving upon these different things and making them work better with what the Switch already is. So like maybe they offer a more legitimate VR functionality, right, that comes kind of from the get-go with the next Switch or the Switch after that, whatever that is, right? So that's one way they can sort of offer more of that, like that physical hardware that would allow the Switch or whatever Nintendo's working on to kind of stay relevant if everything's just streamable. That's one thing they could do. Also, haptic feedback's another. Just really thinking about the interface, like how you interact with the game.
Right. And keep in mind that it does have to be things that improve the game in some way, and it's obvious that it improves the game, because we don't want a sort of Wii U situation where the
that was a
unique
mistake.
thing wasn't really all that, impressive. Well, not that it wasn't impressive, but it wasn't utilized much, and it wasn't really
It wasn't an improvement. It was more like a lateral move.
Right. So
in some cases it was worse.
Yeah, because you had to use the gamepad for a lot of things.
And I think the Wii kind of had that issue as well, though, because we're not really using motion controls that much, right? We don't. And I'll say that, like, the idea of having a touchscreen on a system offers some advantages, and the Switch has that, right? And motion controls in games, that the Switch has that to a certain capacity with most. It has all of it. You can have a fully motion controlled game like you had on Wii with the Joy-Cons, even more so. But most games just use limited motion controls, right? So there were aspects of the Wii and the Wii U that I think carried over into the Switch, but like they weren't like the main feature. And I think with the Switch, they really thought about not like just being different for the sake of being different, but actually something that made your experience better. So hopefully that's what they do with their next system as well. One thing that I think they could do, but it wouldn't necessarily be like a huge game changer, would be offering like cold and like heat sensations with the controllers. Like we already have HD Rumble. Like I feel like the next step is to have HD Rumble on top of like maybe even more advanced textures that we can feel on the controller, on top of like you got your haptic feedback and also maybe feeling cold and hot sensations. Just like imagine like being like hit by a flamethrower and you feel the controllers heat up a little bit, right? And you feel like those wispy like movements that you would get with fire, you know what I mean? Like that would be really interesting. Like that's one thing they could do, but I don't think that'd be a huge game changer because it'd basically just be an even better version of HD Rumble, which is not a huge game changer. Most people don't even realize they have it.
I mean, I think it'd be cool, but I feel like something like that, at least that example in particular, would be something that's wouldn't, like, I don't even know if that would work, first off, but second, I imagine that a feature like that would be something that, like you said, people wouldn't really notice that they even have. So, I don't know. I think that,
like I said, it wouldn't be a big deal. It'd be more like a complementary. It's basically what the HD Rumble is. It's not what sells the Switch. It's just a complementary feature.
Right. I just think that for them to compete with streaming in any capacity, it's got to be like something drastic, something major with it that you can't replicate. Like Labo, you can't replicate. It's not major for a lot of people because let's be fair, like the games on Labo are not exactly the most, enticing of games. But people bought Labo VR a ton because it does something that can't really do otherwise with the Switch. the Labo, for the most part, not counting VR, is mostly just like a Lego set almost, or something like an educational toy almost. But something like Labo could help. Something like how the entire point of the Switch being a hybrid console could help. Like things like that would kind of bring in a whole different demographic, or be something that is so different but also so useful and like obvious that it would be something that people use on a daily basis.
Yeah. I feel like, you look what the Switch is. I think kind of working on perfecting that really is, at least definitely, the immediate direction Nintendo should go, because it's good for what it is now. Like, how, if will they need to do more 15 years down the road? Well, like you brought up, Labo has a whole bunch of functionality. There are more directions they can move on as time goes on. Those will improve. But I think, at least in the near future, just to kind of like reach a conclusion for this topic, like, all Nintendo really has to do is just to improve upon the unique experiences that the Switch is already offering, right? That comfort of use, that versatility of it. Like, because the Switch is kind of like I almost like thinking of it as like a Swiss pocket knife, but for video games, because it can do different stuff, right? So that's kind of where I see Nintendo going within the next generation or two. Maybe they throw in like a 5G card at some point 5 years from now, right? And some sort of, let's say for the next generation of Switch, they have like a. So I'm not talking about this next Switch Pro is coming out. I'm not even talking about the next generation of Switch is coming out after that. I'm talking about maybe like an enhanced version of the next generation of Switch, right? So a Switch Pro 2 XL, I don't know, maybe that would have like a 5G card as an option for some people. Because I think we're years away before Nintendo would ever put like a 5G card in their system.
I also feel that if they put a 5G card before like voice chat, then that's just a whole weird thing.
God.
Because like,
you know what? That's something Nintendo would do.
Why would they put a card in the Switch when you could use your phone, like they've been making us do for this entire time?
Or maybe that's why they'll never they'll never even offer 5G. Like, maybe 5G will be a standard for everything, but Nintendo will be like, nope, no, just connect it with your phone.
Yeah, that sounds more like Nintendo.
Yeah, but again, 5 years from now is a while. Things can change, so we'll see. But let's just refer to the chat. We're pretty much done here. Unless there's anything else you want to add in terms of like where Nintendo could go in terms of like the cloud taking over the universe.
It's just keep the systems unique, but also keep them in the same ballpark, so that way you can, keep getting some of the third parties.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that's definitely the right way to go. So let's see what's going on here. Computer robots added me. Smash! Yes, smash. Forever and always. Let me see. Wait, what are you saying? Oh, Musashi? Brave Fencer? I never played it. Mastermind.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it either.
Computer Robots is asking who wants Toad for Smash DLC. I'm okay. You don't want Toad for Smash, Shifty?
Toad? Captain Toad, maybe?
I would prefer Captain Toad. I think it'd be a good assist trophy, honestly.
Yeah, maybe assist trophy. You can't. I mean, there's no argument against any character at this point. Like, they can make a moveset for anyone. Piranha Plant's in there. Like, you can't make an argument against any character anymore.
I look forward to them making a Rock the character.
They probably will. Take the Rock from Kirby. Bam.
There you go. It's already part of Kirby's moveset, but make that its own character.
Exactly.
Just one of the stone enemies from Kirby.
make that a character, or make Geodude a fighter.
Oh man, there you go. Yeah. I don't think any of these characters are going to happen anytime soon. There will not be a Kirby Rock or a Geodude as a newcomer in the near future until Sakurai decides to subvert our expectations. And
again.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, guys, I'm sorry my voice is kind of going willy-nilly. I feel very hot, so I'm sorry I've been acting weird. But the discussion is pretty much to a close. Thank you everyone for stopping by. Make sure to check out Shifty and his channel. The link to his channel is in the description below. I do think Brandon will finally be back from his vacation, so in case you guys are wondering where he's at, he's still on vacation next week. But hopefully we'll get some interesting E3 news later this week. We'll see what happens. I'm definitely gonna have more E3 related videos because we're gonna be talking about that for sure. There'll also be some other things I'm working on, right? Like some more history related Nintendo stuff. Like I'm gonna get into like the history of like Mario's name maybe later this week, things of that nature. You might see some more stuff. But Shifty, is there anything you want to like talk about with your channel? By all means, go for it.
For the most part, I typically do a lot of like competitive games. So it's like, I play Pokken, I've been playing Mortal Kombat 11, but every Friday I live stream myself playing Smash Brothers with people in chat. So if you want to come by, feel free.
There, yep. Again, guys, the link to his channel is in the description below. Check out Shifty. Please subscribe. Leaving a like would be greatly appreciated, my friends. But I'll get to this one question by Computer Robots before I call it a night, guys. So he's adding me asking, how'd you get into Nintendo? I guess we both can answer this question, but for me, my first gaming memory, I said this a few times already, but my first gaming memory is when my dad was playing the Super Nintendo, and it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Not too long from then, I remember us getting a Nintendo 64 for Christmas, and there was Mario 64, and it was really, really awesome, and that was kind of my first gaming memory. And for me, like, I just saw things that were really cool. I was always drawn to it from the beginning. I wasn't ever like forced into it. I just saw these beautiful worlds and I wanted to interact with them, and that's how I sort of got into gaming. Like, I was given a Nintendo 64 as a kid and I enjoyed the heck out of it.
That's cool. Mine, I honestly couldn't tell you which memory I have is the earliest memory, because I don't know the order of things happened. I was like 3 or 2 or
Born
whatever.
with a controller in his hand.
Basically, yeah, I came out the womb ready to play. But because I have vague memories of being with a babysitter playing, was it Super Mario Brothers? I don't remember what was it like. I remember that, and I remember getting an original Game Boy and having Tetris on that. But I don't remember which came first between those two memories.
Those are early memories, though. I remember the time when those were really relevant. Like, I remember... These aren't my first memories, just some of my early gaming memories. Like, I remember seeing some people run around with a chocobo on PlayStation. Right? I don't know which Final Fantasy it was, but there was one where you could ride a yellow chocobo along a green field on the PS1. I remember Pokemon Stadium. But I also remember there was this other Nintendo system that was like, it also took in cartridges like the N64. It was the Super Nintendo, and I was playing Super Mario World on that as well. Like, remember they used to have Super Mario World in the hotels?
Oh yeah, that was a thing.
Yeah, it was a thing. It was really, really cool. But also Mario Bros, that was a thing. And my first handheld gaming memory is Tetris, actually.
Yeah, I think it was for a lot of people, because it I could be wrong, but wasn't it packaged in?
I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure that was like the biggest Game Boy game.
Yeah, it was. I think it might have been packaged in with at least some kind of SKU with the console. And I don't know. Obviously I grew up with Nintendo from the very beginning, but I just don't remember which game was the one that did it, which console. I just know it has to be one of those two, because I don't remember anything seemingly older console-wise.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like it. You were born with a controller in your hand. You were the chosen one.
The chosen one to lead us into
into the video game promised land. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening and watching, everyone. We'll see you soon. Take care.
All right. See you.